and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another round of the Alpha Touring Challenge Season 6 as brought to you on iRacing, the premier sim racing platform available only on PC. Today marks, of course, round number 9 of 13 as our drivers look to take on the infamous Interlagos circuit. Given the name more colloquially compared to its formal name of the Autódromo José Carlos Pace, this circuit located in Brazil takes its nickname as it's located between two man-made lakes within Sao Paulo. But as it weaves and winds its way through the local landscape, what it does present is an anti-clockwise 15-corner tumultuous task whereby drivers will be put through their paces, not by just the number of corners, but also by the wide array of elevation changes, whether they be rise or falls. And indeed, with stamina and endurance being put to the test of both driver and car, you can imagine this could be the rise and fall of many a championship campaign as we make our way deeper and deeper into the second half of the season and the rounds are running out. But as our drivers get set, we do need to do a little bit of housekeeping and inform you, of course, that this broadcast is being brought to you as a post-round broadcast whereby the racing occurred as of early this week, back on what was previously Monday the 23rd of January 2023, but we're bringing you all the racing action as if it were live for your viewing pleasure, and I as your commentator and host do not know what happens, whether it be in the warm-up practice session that's occurring in the background currently, in the qualifying session, or indeed in the race. And what this being an alpha round, we have one race on the schedule, one feature race of 60 minutes in duration. It's definitely going to be tough, tense, and we wouldn't want any spoilers in the chat, whether it be on Twitch or YouTube. If you tune in there and you participate in this race, we do ask that you keep spoilers to a minimum. We're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit with regards to our media platforms. This broadcast is being brought to you via both YouTube and Twitch. On YouTube, it's being brought to you via what is, if you search for YouTube, search for TX141TX, alternatively Paul Walsh, and tune in there. Alternatively, if you are on Twitch, you can go to twitch.tv/TX141. Now, who is Paul Walsh? Who is TX141? Well, it is I, your host and commentator. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Paul Walsh, also known as TX141 or Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and all of your racing action tonight will be covered by myself and indeed for the remainder of this series. And speaking of our schedule for today, or for tonight, depending on where you are in the world, times in Greenwich Mean Time there, GMT or Universal Coordinated Time, we can see that in just under 13 minutes time, we'll be heading into our qualifying session. 15 minutes in duration, and all our drivers will be out on circuit looking to get their utmost in terms of lap time and set themselves up for success. After that, we'll be heading straight to the grid for our one and only feature race today, the Alpha race, if you will. And as we said earlier, 60 minutes in duration, and that's due to commence at what is 8 o'clock this evening. And we look forward to seeing how all of our drivers take on the task of making sure to manage their race, not just in terms of pace, but also consistency, and also a mandatory pit stop thrown into the mix. You can imagine our drivers will be thinking about their strategy just as much about the prospect of overtaking on circuit. But as we talk about overtakes and whatnot, we do have to overtake the train of thought with the idea of our season so far and what still lies in wait as the calendar rages on. And well, as we look to our calendar so far, we can see that now on round 9 of 13, it has been a long trek through the season so far. And when I say a long trek, it's been a very positive one. In fact, step by step, we have seen the battle in action intensify from round to round. Starting all the way back on the 7th of November 2022, we began the story in Belle Isle, of course, in the city of Detroit, in the state of Michigan, and we saw that our drivers take on the infamous street circuit, the Detroit Grand Prix, if you will, which has always played host to our season openers in most recent seasons of the Alpha Touring Challenge. Much love for its close nature and the fact it presents plenty of overtaking opportunities in an ideal location, and our drivers indeed rose to the occasion there and our opening feature race round of the season. After that, they made their way from the state of Michigan over to the state of California for the Monterey County circuit at Laguna Seca, and there in the Dustin Desert on the 14th of November, we saw our drivers take on the very tight and twisty circuit in 3 sprint races in our first sprint round of the season. We then made our way across the Pacific Ocean to the Fuji Speedway circuit in Japan on the 21st of November there in our second feature race round. We saw our drivers take on the task of the long straight and the multitude of corners in between, and well, some surprises were in store there and some major battles came with it. And then we took a brief break because, of course, of Thanksgiving, before returning on the 12th of November for the Suzuka circuit, seeing our drivers take on the Suzuka Grand Prix circuit in our second sprint round. Indeed, plenty of drama there up and down the field, but particularly in the top 5 of the field, we saw plenty of battle, indeed some rivalries be set in stone. We then made our way from Japan to the continent of Europe for the Hungaroring circuit in Hungary on the 19th of December there, and at the circuit that shares namesake with its own country of host, we saw in the Grand Prix circuit over the course of our feature race round, there was all about strategy and also about track position, and our top 3 really did find themselves standing alone from the rest of the field. Then we took another break for Christmas and then returned at the start of 2023 on the 2nd of January for the Donington Park circuit in the United Kingdom. And then a sprint race round that was not to be forgotten about. We can imagine the Donington Park circuit, a symbol, if you will, of British Touring Car Championship over the years, and it did not disappoint with regards to the Alpha Touring Challenge, while touring car racing class drivers took on the circuit, and there were battles by the dozen. Indeed, plenty of moments to remember, and indeed some key moments perhaps shaping the championship campaign. Then making away from the United Kingdom over to Austria for what was the Red Bull Ring round on the 9th of January 2023. There in round number 7, we saw it was another 3 sprint races. In fact, we saw it was a feature race round. I should correct myself there. And what the Red Bull Ring is all about being smart with the draft and being bold on the brakes. And well, could anybody catch Wojciech Świrydowicz? Nobody could in the end, albeit Logan McKinzie tried to stay as close as possible, but 3 tenths was the closest he would get over the distance. And then last time out, of course, we were in Germany at the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit in another sprint race round on the 16th of January, round number 8, where we saw the very technical circuit with its limited straights and plentiful corners really catch out a good number of drivers. And whether they're in the Alpha or the Delta class, there were plenty of battles to be had and many moments whereby drivers really having to look to try and find those extra points to set themselves up for success with now only 5 rounds to go. But today, of course, is Interlagos, and after this week, we'll be making our way over to Norway for the Rudskogen and Malta Centre circuit, heading all the way back to Europe from the South American continent. And on the 30th of January there, we'll be seeing our drivers take on the Norwegian countryside in a very tricky circuit, which is extremely tight. Of course, we saw it feature in our previous season, and whilst overtakes were not plentiful in certain supply, you can imagine our drivers will be looking to give it everything they can in order to find those overtakes out on the circuit, because if they can't do it in qualifying, they'll have to do it in the race. That will mark our final sprint race round of the season, and then we focus on Alpha rounds from that point onwards. In round number 11, we're making our way back to the United States of America to the Ohio State for the Mid-Ohio Motorsport Course Centre, and then on the 6th of February, we'll see our drivers take on a classic circuit, which of course was our penultimate hosting round for Season 5, but it's not quite a penultimate one for this season, but still a circuit which many of our drivers love and will love to see them take it on. Now, our penultimate round on the 13th of February, we'll be heading to the state of Georgia for the Road Atlanta circuit, and there will be a run through the roller coaster ride of road racing, where our drivers will make their way through the plentiful elevation changes, the sweeping corners, the fast curves, and everything in between. And then they'll make their way from the United States of America to the season finale, the special round, which is highlighted in pink there at Bathurst in Australia, the Mount Panorama Raceway on the 20th of February, and we will bring it all to a close. And well, the big question for our drivers there will be, who can come out on top, giving it all, and will anybody be able to bring a last-minute surprise in our Bathurst special? Well, we look forward to that, but of course we come to today, and as we talk a little bit more about today, we are here at the Autódromo José Carlos Pace Grand Prix circuit in Interlagos, Sao Paulo of Brazil. And with this circuit, as you can see from the circuit map provided us by simracingwiki.com, is a circuit like no other when it comes to creating potential drama. Given the fact there are plentiful of overtaking spots, but also the winding corners of this circuit combine to make it a very tricky circuit to master, while our drivers will need to be keen and have an eye in with regards to each and every corner if they want to do well here, because they make their way across the straightaway and down towards turn at number 1 on the start-finish straight. They'll break the way into the centre S chicane. Left, right, left is the order, while drivers will make the way into a slightly downhill and off-camber braking zone into turn number 1, trying to brake as late as possible and roll the way through the left-hander before setting the car up for the right-hander at turn number 2, of course named after the infamous Brazilian Formula 1 driver Ayrton Senna. And as they make their way through turn number 2, they'll charge through the Curva do Sol at turn number 3, the long left-hander flat out there in the run to the Reta Oposta straight. That with the first 3 corners complete, and then the circuit takes a change of complexion. For as they make their way down the straightaway, they'll brake into turn number 4, heading into the left-hander there, and through the double left they go, as they come down through the off-camber corner and flat out through turn number 5. Heading up the hill towards turn number 6, they return on a slight elevation change and make their way to a double right-hander at turn 6 and 7, where it's all about nailing the double apex as best as possible. And as they come through the right-hander and make their way up towards turn number 8, it'll be heavy on the brakes, and as they slam down on the anchors, they'll come into the first of 2 hairpins. Right their way through turn number 8, it's a downhill drop into Pinheiro corner at turn number 9, where they'll need to try and rise on the apex curb and keep the car tucked on in before they break their way into turn number 10, the second hairpin, the slowest corner on the circuit, and get it right out of there. They'll find themselves running through Magulo corner, and through turn number 11 they'll roll their way down towards Jinsao at turn number 12. And off camber corner at turn number 11, we could see many a driver go wide there, but they'll all battle their way into Jinsao corner at turn number 12, be hard on the brakes and get an early apex for the simple reason they'll want to get back on the throttle as soon as possible, because it's going to be a full throttle run all the way up the hill through turns 13, 14 and 15 to get it done in the run to turn number 1 at once again. And well, the problem with a circuit map provided us by simracingwiki.com is it's two-dimensional. It doesn't quite tell you the whole story of the elevation change of this circuit, but what we can definitely tell you is the highest elevation point on this circuit is at turn number 15, and meanwhile the lowest elevation point on the circuit is at turn number 5, and there is a huge elevation change between the corners over the course of the lap, and that in itself will pose a problem for our drivers, because they need to manage not just understeering the car, not just manage the acceleration points, but they've also got to manage that some corners are very heavily off camber and some are quite cambered. But speaking of managing that, they've also got to make sure they manage the race rules, and let's give you a reminder of those rules. In terms of setup, car fuel loads have been restricted to 45% for this round, as they have been for the last few rounds. And because this is an alpha round or an alpha race round or a feature race round, however you want to call it, there is a mandatory pit stop in which drivers must take on fuel. Tyre changes are entirely optional. A driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 13 or more instant points. A driver shall be disqualified if they accumulate 16 instant points, and the following bonus points are available, of course. 1 point for pole position, 1 point for fastest lap, 1 point for the Sublime Finesse Award, which is the fewest instance over the round, 1 point for leading a lap, and that's over the entirety of the race. If a driver should lead a single lap, they'll pick up the point, and 1 point for the Naked Aggression Award, the most overtakes over the round. Now you may be wondering, are these rewards class specific? No, they are not. They will apply to the single driver that's able to achieve them. So the 1 point for pole position will go to overall pole position, not the alpha pole sitter and the delta pole sitters respectively, and that applies through all of the different bonus points available. That's enough about points, regulations, and everything in between. I know what you're all here for. You're here for the racing. Well, as we head back to our pictures here, and our drivers get ready to go back to our live pictures, we do look to Justin Rhodes and making his way on down there towards the next corner. In fact, our circuit map has glitched out a little bit there, and that is because of the replay file we're taking a look back at. We've had a slight technical hitch in the run-up to tonight with regards to the replay file. It just seems as though our timing machinery not quite keeping up with it, so as a result we are seeing everybody looking stationary on the circuit map in the top right corner of your screen, but we can assure you they're not stationary. They are continuing to make their way on around the circuit as we do bring things back up there. You can see it continues to plague us, and also we're not quite getting our drivers at times at the moment, but those will be resolved for qualifying. As we see Justin Rhodes making his way down through turn number 9. Of course, right now, your Delta Championship leader. And how can you tell who's a Delta versus an Alpha? Well, imagine our Alphas are our Pro drivers. They're denoted on the timing tout by a blue sash against their name. And meanwhile, our Pro-Ams, or our Deltas, if you will, they are denoted by a purple sash against their name in the timing tout. But it's Justin Rhodes who leads the way there. And meanwhile, in the Alpha class, it's none other than Wojciech Świrydowicz, who is currently leading, albeit not in the pit lane or out on circuit at the moment, so we're not quite able to see him. But what we do see is Micah Hendricks here for Hassel's Motorsports, making the way into turn at number 8. But as they make the way around here and get themselves warmed up, we do have 2 new drivers to introduce to you today, and they are 2 Delta drivers, 2 rookies to the Alpha Touring Challenge as well. As we see here, Katie King making the way into turn at number 10, rolling the way on through, and join us in the Hyundai Elantra N. Good luck to them, and a very good choice to car. It'll be very fast around here, but tyre degradation may be a bit of an offset for the Hyundai drivers, given the fact this car is prone to wearing its tyres down quite aggressively over a 60-minute race. And we did see that last year, of course. Our Elantra drivers really struggling in the final 10 minutes at Interlagos in what was a feature as well in the Alpha round due to the tyre drop-off. And we also do need to introduce none other than Mark Crawford, who currently not out on circuit, and in fact we'll show you them as they make their way into the qualifying session. But speaking of Elantra drivers, here's John Lauzon for Beaver Buzz Energy, perhaps one of the unluckiest drivers in recent rounds, not quite having the run of form that perhaps he's wanted. It's not always gone right, as we see the Canadian making the way out to turn number 5 and up towards 6-7, deciding to duck off the circuit there, and I think the sign that it is enough in practice, and doing a little bit of rallycross it would seem, as meanwhile Mark Darnell making the way through turn at number 14 into 15 very shortly. And as he comes from through, and we're almost set to go into qualifying, ladies and gentlemen, we do say hello to a number of you there in the Twitch chat, including Daniel Sedino 414, who says hello, and hello to you, Daniel. And we also say hello there to Whaler Junior 31, and good evening to you, Whaler, and hello to you indeed. And I hope you're all doing well, ladies and gentlemen. And if you are tuning on either of the YouTube or the Twitch broadcast, don't be shy, feel free to say hi, for the simple reason we can see both chats. Do let us know how you're doing, how your week's gone, and whether you're excited to see some more racing, which I'm sure you are. And also, have you got anything special planned for the weekend? What of it being the 24 Hours of Daytona this weekend in the real world of motorsport, the IMSA Daytona 24-hour event kicking off soon. And well, we've got plenty of motorsport to come, whether it be in the real world, alternatively on the iRacing simulator platform. Indeed, the Alpha Touring Challenge continues with its 6th season on the iRacing platform, and it's fantastic to see touring car racing at its finest, we would say. And as we see Mark Darnell making his way through turns 6 and 7, only a couple minutes now before we transition into qualifying. And it looks like all our drivers absolutely set here. And as we said earlier, this is going to be a task that is tantamount to what is a stamina test, just as much as it's a test of outright pace, for the simple reason you have to outlast Interlagos. It is a circuit which absolutely punishes you as a driver, and the smallest of mistakes really are amplified given how tiring the circuit is. But as we do see here, Vajulas making his way on towards the next lap in his practice session. Well, as he comes across the line here, the Beaver Buzz Energy driver crossing on through. And well, in fact, as the time is almost about to transition over to qualifying, ladies and gentlemen, we will be right back for the qualifying session to get underway. Of course, we don't want our qualifying times spoiled, which is a bit of a limitation with iRacing replay file, so we just need to do a little bit of technical manipulation. But we will be back within 1 minute to get qualifying underway and see how our drivers get on in the 15-minute session. Don't go anywhere, we'll be back shortly. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are back then, and qualifying is about to get underway as our drivers make their way out of the pit lane and head out onto circuit for the first time in anger here today at Interlagos. And we see Franz Wojciech making the way out of the pit lane exit there, of course running in parallel to the flow of the centre S corners and the Curva del Sol as our drivers make their way up towards turn number 4 down the Retro Posta. Now, what does it take to have a good qualifying lap at Interlagos, I hear you ask? Well, it takes a multitude of things. The most important one is keeping the lap consistent all the way through. Now, we keep using this term. We talk about consistency in terms of racing, making sure to now lap after lap and keep them within a certain range of one another, so always targeting a particular lap time and hitting it every lap back to back. But also, when you make your way around here on a single lap, you've got to keep it consistent in terms of managing the car under braking, making sure to hit those braking points, also getting back on the throttle, keeping that weight transfer of the car nicely placed, and also making sure not to kick in too much front end wheel spin. Given the fact, of course, that all these touring car racing class cars you see, maybe the Hyundai Veloster N, the Elantra N, the Honda Civic Type R, or the Audi RS3, albeit we don't have any Audis in attendance today. All these cars front engine, front wheel drive. It means the front tyres do all of the hard work. As you see Adrian Fedorowski making his way downhill through turn number 11 into 12 there. And as he rolls his way on through the left hand, in fact, that is Matt Shepka, as my eyes do deceive me, on the times out. And it is Shepka as he makes his way up the hill for Sork Steer Racing. And here is Adrian Fedorowski there as he makes his way up towards turn number 4. And as he heads down towards the braking zone, heading onto his first warm-up lap, because the front tyres are doing so much hard work. As a result, it is very easy to make a mistake, put the power down too soon, put it down too aggressively, you get that front end wheel spin and the car starts to slide away, understeers away from you, and that's the last thing you want to do, of course. And therefore putting a good lap together requires you to just balance the car each and every time. But also on top of that, it's about getting used to the fact that certain corners around here you can brake much later compared to other corners where you need to brake early. For example, in the run all the way up to turn 6 and 7, you can brake quite late, given the fact it's an uphill braking zone. Therefore, the natural nature of gravity helps you in braking a little bit later. Conversely, meanwhile, when you're braking into turn number 4, you do have to brake a bit earlier than you normally would, perhaps, because it is a slight downhill braking zone. And the same could be said in the braking zone to turn number 10, as we see here. One is Adrian Fedorowski making his way on through, given the fact it is a downhill braking zone with a little bit of camber on the road as well. And when you put 2 and 2 together there, it really does make the corner highly complex. But as he manages all that in his mind, indeed the cockpit of the Honda Civic Type R, we do look to introduce Mark Crawford, who unfortunately is not out the pit lane at the moment. So hopefully we will have Crawford make his way out and we can introduce him formally. But with the fact that he's a rookie to the series, much like KT King, as we do see here, King making the way to the timeline. Well, right now just getting themselves set and putting some laps in. We'll be interested to see where they exactly fit into the sequence of drivers here. And of course, that's the big challenge when you're new to a series, in the fact that you may have raced with a couple of the drivers elsewhere in other official series, but at the same time, the challenge will be finding your place in amongst the group. And of course, for the Delta driver of King, the big game is to try and be the fastest person ahead of Justin T. Rhodes. But if you can't do that, trying to get into the fight versus the likes of Kurt Smith and also what is Kirk Lane and, well, everyone in between there, with a fight really building up for P2 in the Delta class, with Kurt Smith, the current second place driver, and just behind them is Eric Statson, also at Jacob Wally, and everybody really going for gold there. And speaking of Jacob Wally, we see him here making his way to the timeline, coming on through, and we're starting to get our first times come on in as the first laps are put on the board. And Wally there with 44.818. It is only 1.5 tenths off of Shepka's provisional pole lap, or a 44.655. I suspect we will be seeing some high 40, high 43 later on in this qualifying session, given the fact the track's got to rub it in, as we briefly do lose Wally there, but he does seem to rematerialise from the internet ether as he makes his way up towards turn at number 4. But as he heads on down the Retro Posta here, well, Justin Rhodes immediately put in a marker there with 44.634, and it is 1.5 tenths, almost 2 tenths faster than Wally as he makes his way down on through the centre S here. But right now Justin Rhodes not leaving anything up to chance, immediately putting the hammer down early on in this qualifying session, and that's for everybody else to respond as he heads on down towards turn number 4. But meanwhile, John Lauzon, conversely, the BBuzz Energy driver, looking to turn around what's been a really different luck of form recently, and the run of bad luck has continued all the way through the last 3 rounds. And can he subvert some of that today and turn it into good fortune? That'll be the challenge. Well, if he's going to do so, he's going to need to pip this man to pole, currently on the 44.294, already getting closer and closer to those low 44s and those high 43s. McKinzie from Yellow Flag Motorsports here, definitely trying to make it work as he heads on down towards turn number 4. Now, in the long charge here, we do also see that we have what is Hendricks not going out from the pit lane at the moment, Micah Hendricks, and I believe Hendricks is not permitted to take part in qualifying. The Alpha driver, for the simple reason we saw them in the Honda last time out. They've switched back to the Hyundai the Hyundai Veloster, as I was almost about to say Elantra Day, given the population of Elantras on circuit, but Hendricks therefore having to forfeit qualifying. And as our drivers continue on around here with 10 minutes to go, well, very shortly we will be getting an onboard lap with one of our drivers to give you an idea of what it's like to string a lap together here at Interlagos. And in fact, we'll be riding on board with Daniel Sedano as he makes his way through turn number 12, coming through Jinsao corner, and up the hill he roars. And as he makes his way through, completely flat out at this point, and heading up towards turn number 14 very shortly. And as he makes his way through the left-hander, we jump on board here, bring out the dashboard in the bottom right corner of your screen, and take you through the lap. Now flat out he heads across the timeline, and you'll notice very shortly he'll bring the car over to the right hand side as he creeps towards turn at number 1, up into 6th gear, onto the brakes here after the 50-meter board, and coming down the gearbox from 6th all the way to 3rd gear, down to 2nd, brings it to the middle of the road, back over to the left and swings it to the right there, through 2nd gear up to 3rd gear through the centre S's, and now going through the Curva del Sol here, turn number 3, flat out he goes up to 4th gear, and now powering down the Retro Bosta. Now making his way all the way towards turn number 4. It's a good start to his lap, a nice smooth flow, and he's got to carry on that flow as he gets ready to brake. Looks at his right hand side for his brake marker. The 100-meter board there, braking about 90 metres from apex, comes over the apex curve there, gets on the power nice and early. You've got to be careful of the car understeering away with the off-camber corner, and as he comes through turn number 5 flat out, he charges up the hill. Now heading up towards the breakings over turn 6 and turn a double right hand here with 2 apex curves that are very close together. Now's the first apex, lets the car travel a little bit and then brings it back into turn number 7. A nice line there as he gets ready to head into turn number 8 on the brakes, coming down from 4th gear to 3rd to 2nd, and now heading to what is a Pinheiro corner as he makes his way through turn number 9, rides the apex curve here with the 2 left tyres, absolutely clatters the curve as he makes his way out to 9 up towards 10, a little bit of oversteer there on corner exit, brings over to left and brakes late into turn number 10, tries to go for a late apex and then exits out of the hairpin. Now through at turn at number 11 he goes through Magulo and completely on the left here as he rolls the car in. No braking required, just lift off the throttle in 3rd up to 4th, brakes into Jinsao corner. As he comes down from 4th to 2nd, a bit of a tight exit line there, not the line he wanted. He wanted to use a little bit more of the real estate on offer there with regards to space on circuit, and I think that for Sedano, a couple of small mistakes starting to be compounding his lap as they make the way up towards turn number 1 at once again, but definitely right now for Sedano, not the lap he wanted, but as he heads to the line, definitely improving in the middle sector lap, the lap being broken up into 5 subsectors, but you'll want those improvements a little bit later on as he crosses the line. Now as he comes across the line, now you'll notice that our drivers will typically deviate over towards the right hand side as they go on to the next lap. If they're on a fast lap, they'll stay over to the left. It shortens the run to the timeline. It compromises their line into turn number 1 on the next lap, but if they're on a fast lap, they won't be too worried about that compromise, given the fact that we're putting their faith in the current lap they're on. But meanwhile, speaking about putting faith on the lap they're on, Justin Rhodes right now, well, he'll have faith that he's got enough in the tank to take Delta pole with a P3 overall currently, but meanwhile, only half a tenth off of him. Jacob Wally P5 right now, the two of them separated by Logan at McKinzie, and it is getting closer and closer inside that top 5 at the moment. Wojciech Świrydowicz does seem to have almost 3 tenths over the field with a 43.681, but we said we would see 43s. We're now breaking into the mid 43s, it would seem, from our Alpha and overall championship leader. And speaking of Świrydowicz, here he is making his way on through and down through turn at number 11. As he drops his way through the corner there, using the space available onto the brakes. And our driver's allowed to use that runoff area there into turn number 12. And as he heads through the left-hander and up the hill he goes, well, you can see Świrydowicz really going on strong. But a good point there being raised by Logan McKinzie in the YouTube chat. 7th place, only 2 tenths back right now. And that, of course, is in reference to the fact from John Lauzon in P2 all the way back to Jerome Bajulas, who we see here tailing after John Lauzon as the 2 Beaver Buzz Energy teammates try to use one another to get a bit of a draft bump on what is the straights here. And when we say draft bump, in terms of using that slipstream to just bolster their top end speed by 2 to 3 miles an hour extra, and it may aid the lap. We can see from Lauzon to Bajulas, it is only 2 tenths of a second, and then Shepka is only a further tenth behind. And with Robert Abrams and Franz Moschink not too far from him either, really this battle to be anywhere between P2 and P10 on the grid could not be close, and it is looking to be one of the closest, if not the closest qualifying session we have had this season so far. And to be fair, given how close all the sessions have been this season, that is saying something. It is going to be fine margins in the end that determines where our drivers end up on the grid, as we do see Sedano making the way out of turn at number 3, and down towards 4 on the brakes he goes. And as he gets ready to hit the anchors here, Sedano holding on comfortably at the moment, but as he comes on through at turn number 4, I think he'll feel as though there's a bit more time out there, because currently he's less than half a tenth off of Dom Savio, who we haven't seen in recent rounds. We're very happy to say that the Delta driver is back, and currently back on form with P3 in the Delta class, P12 overall, as he makes his way through turn at number 8 in the privateer machine. But as he rolls his way on down here, of course, right now with 5 minutes left, it does become ever more important for our drivers to try and find some improvement. And speaking of trying to improve, here's Spencer Cockayne making their way across the timeline, improving in all regards, and this lap jumps from what was P19 to P18 with a lap there of 47.815, but still almost a whole second off of next driver in the grid of Kirk Lane. Well, I think right now for Cockayne, he's got to try and find a bit more out there as he makes his way on through, and as he comes through the left-hander turn number 3. What about Eric Statzer, meanwhile? Well, the big names in the Delta Championship, of course, currently P3 in the Deltas, and, well, currently sitting at, what is there, 3 tenths, in fact, 2.5 tenths off of Daniel Sedano, P5 in the Deltas, P14 overall is Statzer, and, well, not working out currently. But again, we could see a little bit of a gulf here between our Hyundai drivers and also our Honda drivers, in the fact the Honda perhaps not the ideal car for this circuit on a single lap's worth of pace, because the Honda, the one thing it does have going for it is very strong braking and handling, but conversely, the one thing that's its key downside is straight line acceleration and top speed, and we do have quite a number of significant elevation zones combined with acceleration zones, such as Ranat Junsao here, and this is where the Honda's weaknesses will really be felt, and it will cost it a lot of time. But on the other end of the spectrum, when we go racing for 60 minutes, the Honda should have the tyre degradation capacity and the greater advantage there, and so long as the driver does not overheat those front tyres, those tyres will feel much more comfortable, particularly in the final 15 to 10 minutes of the race, compared to those on the Elantra, and also to a degree those on the Veloster. As we see Świrydowicz making the way to the pit lane, meanwhile John allows on there, and Jerome Vajay still trying to work together and find a bit more time as they come on through into turn number 8. But as they roll the way on the brakes there and off and into turn number 9 right now, well, Lauzon definitely best of the rest if we exclude Świridowicz's pole lap, which is, we say, almost 3 tenths faster, and nobody seems to be able to find an answer for it. But Lauzon definitely on the bubble right now with only half a tenth between himself and Logan McKinzie, and McKinzie really putting in hard work here. But also, we have to give credit to our 2 Delta drivers who've really put themselves in the mix of Justin Rhodes and Jacob Wally. Both of them there still separated by half a tenth, P4, P5, and this is absolutely phenomenal work from them. They are pushing that championship in the Delta class to its very limit right now, and well, some of you would argue, why are they not classified as Alphas given the pace they're showing? Well, they're in the Delta class this season, but if they continue this way, I would not be surprised if we see them being promoted to the Alphas as of next season. But as they make the way onwards towards the remainder of this qualifying session, we do have an opportunity to ride on board with some of our other drivers to give you an idea of a lap around here. Well, we did have a lap with the Hyundai, what was the Hyundai Veloster earlier, of Daniel Sedino, and oh goodness me, is that a bit of contact there between what is McKinzie and I believe that's David Bauer, the 2 of them coming together, and that will compromise both of their respective laps as they make the way on through. So we may not be able to get a good lap there. It will be slightly compromised, but meanwhile what we can do is we can ride on board with Eric Statz here to give you an idea of what it's like to run around here in the Honda Civic Type R. Perhaps the car that's not ideal for 1 lap pace, but of course Eric Statz will do everything he can to offset that as we jump on board and listen and ride on in. So making his way up towards turn at number 1 in 6th gear at the moment, getting ready to go onto the brakes and looking to brake the 50 metres board, about 55 metres as he comes all the way down the 2nd gear. A very tight run onto the apex curve there, snaps the car back over to the right for turn number 2 and gets it done nicely as he upshifts the 3rd, upshifts the 4th on the curve there, the Curva del Sol, and as he makes his way down the Retro Posta, heading up towards turn number 4, he goes up to 5th gear here. The Honda now starting to expose this lack of top end, but still trying to go as late as possible on the brakes here into turn 4, braking now 80 metres from corner apex, drifts the car slightly. Can he make the corner? He just about does. Goodness me, Stats are then leaving it to the last possible moment as he comes through 5 and up towards 6, and well there, I think it may have been a little bit of a nerve-wracking moment for him in the privateer outfit as he makes way into the double right at 6 and 7, takes plenty of apex curve at 6, brings it back together comfortably for 7. But he aborts the lap, then decides it's a no-go. Well, that's a surprise and not a welcome one to be sure as he makes his way into the pit lane. We still do have a minute left to go, plus also overtime for those drivers who are currently on a lap. Well, the fact this is an alpha round, so we do permit our drivers to finish their final qualifying laps when the clock strikes 15 minutes. But as we see here, while he's making his way down towards turn number 4, will meanwhile, as he comes on through and not currently improving on this lap, it would seem. Justin Rhodes in the pit lane. He feels that he's done enough. And have we got anybody else improving out there? Well, we do have David Bauer making his way on through turn number 14 in towards 15. He goes with a distant double toe there off the back of McKinzie and one other driver. And as he heads to the line here, well, is he going to be improved? As we see, I believe one driver coming in, and that is Mark Darnell coming into the pit lane. And, well, the check of flag is out in this qualifying session, and Bauer does not improve there. He stays where he is, P11 overall, P9 in the Alphas. And we've still got a couple more heading on around, including Adrian Fedorowski, who heads up towards the timeline. But it looks like they're going a bit slow. They're coming out to turn number 12. Will this be an aborted lap? I don't think so. In fact, he seems to be absolutely powering it on through, and he does not shift the car to the pit lane, so he's going to have a short run here. I think he feels he's on an improving lap as he crosses the timeline. It's not an improvement for Fedorowski. He will be staying P6 in class, P15 overall as he heads into turn number 1. We've also got KT King making the way up towards turn 1, but King there getting it wrong in the run on down the start-finish line straight, and as a result, that is going to be an aborted lap as Jacob Wally, meanwhile, heading towards the timeline here, not improving by looks of things, so he'll be staying P5 at best. What about James Carr? However, the breakfast for dinner driver here will want to be on that second row. He'll want to make sure he's ahead of the Deltas if he can, or at the very minimum that he's able to outquad Jacob Wally in order to be able to assist Justin Rhodes off the line. Well, as he heads to the timeline here, he's had a very strong second half of the lap, but he decides it's not enough. He comes into the pit lane, and with that, ladies and gentlemen, that is qualifying complete. It is Wojciech Świrydowicz on pole, subject to confirmation when they go to the grid, and that is overall pole for Wojciech Świrydowicz and in the Alpha class. And meanwhile, it's Justin Rhodes who takes P4 overall, but pole position in the Delta class there. But Rhodes and Wally definitely making themselves felt in the higher classes, but it's time for us to go to the grid. So this is how they line up with the laps confirmed. Wojciech Świrydowicz takes pole position overall and in the Alpha class for round number 9 of Season 6 of the Alpha Touring Challenge, as brought to you today from Sao Paulo, Brazil. Alongside him in the front row will be the BVAR's Energy driver of John Lauzon, turning things around after a difficult run of form recently in qualifying. And it is Logan McKinzie for Yellow Flag Motorsports, who starts off our second row in P3, joined by the Delta pole sitter of Justin T. Rhodes, P4 for Breakfast for Dinner. Then it's James Carr for Breakfast for Dinner, P5, ahead of Jacob Wally for Breakfast for Dinner, P6, and the two of them will line up together with Jerome Bajelis and BVAR's Energy P7 on the full throw, ahead of Talksteer Racing's Matt Shepka. Then we have Francois Schink from BVAR's Energy P9, and David Bauer for Breakfast for Dinner, completing the top 10. Round number 6 goes to Yellow Flag Motorsports' Robert Abrams, joined by the privateer of Dom Savio, and behind them on the 7th row will be the pair of Daniel Sardino from Hassholz Motorsports and Eric Statz of the privateer. And on row number 8, it's QZ Motorsports' Adrian Fedorowski, joined by the privateer of Mark Darnell, before we have Kirk Lane and Spencer Cockayne on the 9th row there, P17 at P18, with the Hassholz Motorsports driver having a difficult qualifying session. And then KT King on their debut starting P19, and then Micah Hendricks P20 was not permitted to take part in qualifying due to the car swap for Hassholz Motorsports. And then last but not least, it'll be Not Lost Motorsports' Mark Crawford starting at P21. Well, the gridding process is complete, ladies and gentlemen, and now we await the lights. And it's lights out and away we go here for round 9 of 13 in the Alpha Touring Challenge Season 6. And Wojciech Świrydowicz gets a great start off the line as they charge their way up into turn number 1. But look at Logan McKinzie, meanwhile, trying to go around the outside as early as possible as they roll the way onto the brakes. And as they come on through, McKinzie gets it done ahead of Lauzon. But meanwhile, further back, you can see now everybody continuing together through the centre S's. And as they make the way through the curve of Santos de Reta Aposta, with David Bauer, they're getting one place over Francois Schink as they head on down the straight for the first time of asking in anger in race conditions. And as they head up towards turn number 4, John Lauzon immediately trying to take a look back there versus McKinzie into turn number 4, but he can't find it. Meanwhile, further back, we can see Eric Statzer trying to go on the offensive there versus what is Robert Abrams, as Abrams trying to go around the outside. And welcome back to the Yellow Flag Motorsports driver, Robert Abrams. We haven't seen him in a good one. It's great to see the American taking to the tarmac once again. And as they make the way through turn 5 and up towards 6 right now, biggest gainer at the start of this race, Micah Hendricks up the inside there, Dom Savio, and already gained 7 places at the start of this race and showing no signs of slowing down as they make the way into turn number 8. But on the brakes, and Hendricks is going to look around the outside of Statzer here, well, as they make the way and throw down to the inside into Penahirio and gets it done. That's an 8th place gained, and we haven't even completed one lap yet, and Hendricks is absolutely flying as they make the way into turn number 10. But on the brakes here, and you can see, meanwhile, Francois Schinck under a bit of pressure there from Robert Abrams, who's trying to come on through. But as they make the way down through 11, Schinck gets the good run and bow on the inside there. And as they head up towards turn number 12, onto the brakes they go. Well, they all look to run line astern at the moment, but at any moment, you can imagine one driver may find a way above the other as they head on through at turn number 12, and up the hill they go once again. But when we talked about Hendricks being the biggest gainer of them all, the biggest loser at the start of this race was at Brett Stinner's Jacob Welley, who's dropped all the way down from the third row of the grid to P16, and right now is trying to find a way past Mark Darnell. But after one lap, it's Wojciech Świrydowicz who leads the race ahead of McKinzie, followed by Lauzon in P3. Then we have Carr P4, followed by Joan Bridges in P5, Shepka P6, followed by Rhodes P7, who is your Delta leader at this time. And then behind him, Schinck, Bauer and Abrams. And then it is in P11, Best and Micah Hendricks there as they make the way through turn number 3 and onwards towards turn number 4 once again. Meanwhile, further back, we do have a bit of battling going on, as in fact, KT King's had an instant coming down through turns 1 and 2. Well, it's gone wrong for King, but they've avoided the tyre barrier by the looks of things. But is there any potential damage to the car by being turned around or contact? That's what we don't know. But meanwhile, what we do know is that right now, Robert Abrams is trying to gain even more places here. And whilst he's been away, his spirit has never gone away. And as they make the way out towards turn number 6 right now with David Bauer on the inside here in the battle for what is P9 overall, they roll the way on through. And as they head on through the long right double-hander here, they head up towards turn number 10. Onto the brakes, they both battle. Bauer on the outside. And meanwhile, as they come on down and outside now, turn number 9. Well, Abrams there gets the inside back. And you can see that Hendricks trying to squeeze on through as well. But no way through this time. As they head up in towards turn number 10, back onto the brakes they go, but they stay as they are, as Daniel Sedino just watches on as well. But as they make the way out to 10, through 11 and 12, we jump on board here with the Hassel's Motorsports driver, Micah Hendricks. He heads on towards turn number 12 at the moment, I think, waiting to see if Abrams and Bauer take a little bit more time out to one another, for the simple reason that as they get ready to head up towards turn number 1, well, Hendricks will not have the straight line speed, but what he will have is a brilliant set of brakes in order to try and find his way on through. It's not turn 1, now it has to be into turn number 4. Now we have just had confirmation from Jake Welley in the Twitch chat saying roll backwards at the start line, which was considered to be a jump start by the automated stewarding system in iRacing, so a 28-second stop and hold penalty. And well, I'm very sorry to hear that, Jacob. That's very unfortunate, and hopefully you're able to find your way back into this race to some degree later on. But as we make our way onto the third lap of racing conditions here, Hendricks very close to the back of Bauer, but cannot find a way on through, but gets a really good run off at 2 there. You can see Bauer right now vulnerable as Hendricks immediately peels the car to the inside in the run on down towards turn number 4. On the run they go, and you can see how alternatively Abrams just able to clear off as they get ready to go onto the brakes, and Hendricks goes all in. But will it work here as he comes through a left-hander, too wide as they make the way out towards turn number 6. Now who's going to back out first? That'll be the question here. Will it be Hendricks who backs out, or will it be Bauer? Will neither of them back out here, and they'll both take each other through the corner. Well, Bauer there gets his nose in, but Hendricks thinks he's got the run around the outside, but Bauer stays there. Both of them absolutely obstinate, and we're not complaining, we love it as they make the way into turn number 8, and Bauer holds the position for now, but it has enabled Abrams to break away and go chasing after Francois Schinck as they come down through 9 and up towards 10. Meanwhile, Daniel Sedino behind in P11, in what is P12 actually, we should say, just waiting and watching in the wings as Hendricks tries to squeeze his way into the top 10 overall, but on top of that into P9 in the Alpha class. But as they come on down the hill and in towards turn number 12, we look up to John Lauzon here, who right now sitting in P3, 1.5 seconds over Logan McKinzie, alternatively what is half a second ahead of James Carr looking the other way. Well, Lauzon definitely having a good start. Being jumped by McKinzie off the line in the run to turn number 1, but the Canadian driver here definitely right now getting his head down and focusing on delivering what he can as the race wears on. We've got a long way to go, of course, given the fact that this is an hour, we're only 5 minutes in, it's a marathon, not a sprint, and as they come down towards turn number 1, once again, tyre preservation may be on the mind of many a driver at the front, but meanwhile, one driver is not thinking about tyre preservation, he's thinking about trying to preserve a move that will get him set up for success here. It's Micah Hendricks who tries to go inside to outside versus Bauer. He gets the space, there's contact between the two of them, and I think Hendricks there having to chuck the car off the curb to prevent it from becoming destabilised and going into the inside wall. Well, there's a bit of contact of Abrams, but the two of them have survived it as they make the way down, and right now this is tooth and nail stuff as they make the way onto the braking zone for turn number 4, and Sedano tries to get into the mix as well, and Hendricks here definitely getting his elbows out, they both take each other off, and as they make the way through turn 4 and 5, Daniel Sedino comes on through, and the Delta driver here, we're thinking thank you guys, I'll take the 2 places, and meanwhile Eric Stanson now going side by side here with David Bauer, but he can't find a way around the outside. There's Bauer, makes sure to claim the inside line and firmly stake his claim as that being his, as they make the way into turn number 8, and Stats has to wait and watch on in comparison. But as they come through, meanwhile we look up here to James Carr, who are battling side by side with Jerome Berjulas here. Well, Berjulas trying to go on the offensive versus the breakfast for dinner driver as they make the way through turn 10, and in the drop down towards 11 we ride on board the rear gearbox here of James Carr as he makes way out towards turn number 12. Now having to defend here, interestingly, into Jinsao. Now this is going to compromise his front off the corner as we do get a face for there of the grill. Oh, but what is Berjulas' car? And as they make the way onwards towards turn number 1. Well, with James Carr having to go so defensive, of course it's a cutback on the natural racing line for Berjulas. He's got the inside here, he's got a slight overspeed, and also John Lauzon gifting him a little bit of a distant toe there. Teammates helping one another out, and as they make the way out towards turn number 1, where it's only going to be by fine margins, but I think Berjulas may just have this done as they head on to the anchors once again. Berjulas there, and meanwhile Carr trying to go around outside to inside, but the problem is now Carr's going to be very tight on line, but Berjulas gives him the space, and as they make the way through for able, James Carr had to back out by default there. That's the nature of the corner, and Matt Shepka now wants to get involved here as he makes his way, powering up behind in the Civic as they head up towards turn number 4, and Shepka's been watching this with eager anticipation, looking for his opportunity. He's close, but he's not close enough to threaten into turn number 4 at the moment. He has to wait once again. Of course, he wants to get a move on because he's got Justin Rose, the Delta leader, right behind him in P7, who also wants to try and come on through and gain some more points, because keep in mind, of course, that all the points accrued by drivers in the championship, whether it's in the drivers or the teams championship, is all based on overall finishing position and not class position. Now, what does that mean in practice? Well, you are encouraged as a Delta driver to fight the Alphas and gain more places. Winning is not necessarily enough. The more points you can get, because there are more available to you if you go higher up the order, the better your chances are going to be in the championship. And on top of that, for our Alphas, that does mean that they have to be wary the Deltas may fight them hard for position, for the simple reason that everyone's competing for the same points pool. But as they make the way for return at number 10, meanwhile, a little bit further back, Eric Stats have been dropped by David Bauer as they make the way up towards turn at number 10 themselves, and Bauer continuing on with Daniel Sedino being repassed by Micah Hendricks. Well, the two teammates exchange places for Hassel's Motorsports, but David Bauer right now definitely feeling the pain of losing out earlier on and now trying to come back into this race, albeit he's got a way to go yet, but not where he wants to be currently in P12 overall as he chases after Sedino. But he makes his way up the hill towards turn at number 1 in due course. Rolling on through a bit further back, Spencer Cockayne for Blue Flag Motorsports, or in fact Hassholes at Motorsports there, we should correct ourselves, running a Blue Flag Motorsports livery, albeit representing Hassholes Motorsports in this series, as he makes his way out of turn at number 12 and up the hill he rolls, currently 3.1 seconds off of Kirk Lane. And as we see here, the privateer in the 881 car, and I believe that is the Barefoot Racing livery machine, making its way towards turn number 1. Well, Kirk Lane right now just digging in, and I think focusing on seeing what can come to him later on in this race. But as he heads up towards turn number 1, once again we look from him to the front of the field here, and Wojciech Świrydowicz right now 1.8 seconds clear of Logan McKinzie. You can see the two of them there sharing the same camera space for a brief period of time, but the Polishman here, the privateer, definitely no stranger to having McKinzie chasing him, as we see the Yellow Flag Motorsports driver here from the US really trying to stay close. But the change with Świrydowicz is you can get as close as you want, but then you've got to find an extra 5-10% to even get alongside him into a corner. And that is just how high the standard has been set by Świrydowicz round after round. And as they make the way on out to turn number 9 up towards turn number 10, well, right now both of these drivers absolutely living and breathing their Elantras as they make the way around this Interlagos circuit, but only one of them can be the winner. But as they make the way on around, meanwhile, it's just happened off camera. We look to the aftermath here. Daniel Sedino to Hassholes Motorsports losing the position of P11 to David Bauer there as the Alpha drivers made the pass on the Delta driver. And as they come out to turn number 10, in towards 11, 12, well, definitely right now for Sedino, he's not lost too much. He'll lose some points, but at the same time, he'll still hold position in terms of P2 in the Delta class over Eric Statzer. And, well, a difficult qualifying session for Eric Statzer. But conversely, at the other end, he's had a great start to this race and gained 1 place off the line and gained 2 places overall. And as he makes his way up towards turn number 1, well, for him right now, currently P3 in class, definitely pushing on here and doing everything in his power to really try and hold on to that opportunity to be battling for P2 in the Delta Class Championship. In the absence of Curtis Smith, he's got a huge opportunity today and he won't want to leave it aside. There's no question about it. But he has got Dom Savio behind, and Dom Savio right now is matching him for pace to a degree. Only 2 tenths between the two of them in favour of Statzer last time round, but Dom Savio, of course, a good friend and rival of Eric Statzer, and these two, we saw them battling hard at Imola, if you remember, in season 5 of the series, really coming to terms with one another, and as they make the way on down the rest of possible, we see more of that here today. But as they head up towards the next braking zone, we look from them to a bit further up the road, and we jump on board here with Matt Shepka, the Talksteer Racing driver, as he comes on through turn 6 and 7. Now a bit of a no man's land here. The good news for him in a way is that because he does have Justin Rhodes behind him, now this is not to say that Rhodes will play a bit of a pacifist role all the way through the racing, but because he does have a Delta driver behind him right now, he may be able to tunnel into the fact that he can look more ahead of him than behind him, for the simple reason that Rhodes may be a little bit more focused on safeguarding with the lead of the Delta class, that P7 overall, and that means that Shepka can really put the pressure on Carr and Pachulas, and also allows on in front. But the opposite side of it is in the fact that given the fact that he's the only Honda here in this quartet, or quintet if you will, with Rhodes also included, it does mean that he does not have the straight line speed, and with everybody getting the toe here, his ability to outrun drivers in a draft and one another is neutralised. He's got to do it all in the corners and the brakes. But for Shepka, it's also now, does he play the game of strategy and just decide not to push too hard, stay within arm's reach and focus more on preserving fuel, preserving tyres and shortening that mandatory pit stop that can come at some point in the race as he makes his way up towards turn number 1. With all these challenges that will be going through his mind and the minds of many of our drivers, of course, as he comes down through 1 into 2. You see how much he closes up under braking there into 1. It's these heavy braking zones where the Honda does best, but as he makes his way through 3, he gets very close within 1.5 seconds on the exit of the Cover del Sol, and as he powers on through here, we're gaining little by little, but you can see it's just not enough. As in fact, that gap now stabilising at 0.14 seconds, and then it starts to open up slightly before the braking zone, given that Pachulas has got that toe, as they make the way through turn number 4 here and carry on up the hill very shortly. The head on and up at this point. Also Justin Rhodes there, extremely close, and in fact Rhodes taking a little bit of a peek here around the outside into turn 6, so Rhodes definitely right now not keeping quiet for long and looking to try and get up there. And to be fair, he'll want to be ahead of Shepka to help himself out in terms of points, and also to enable his teammate of James Carr to focus on only looking forward, because then the two teammates can work together in a forward and rear guard action. But as they make the way through 9 and into 10, well, for Rhodes right now, catching Shepka is one thing. Passing him, however, is an entirely different story altogether, for the simple reason that we know that Shepka right now, one of the lone Hondas on this grid, and perhaps the driver who has really embodied the Power of Dreams Honda spirit more than everybody else, in the fact that he's stuck by the car through thick and thin, and right now it's definitely having a bit of a thin moment with regards to its pace. But at the same time, if anybody can make that Honda work, it is Shepka who can find a way of making it work as he heads on up towards turn at number 1 once more. But as he comes on through here, we do look from them to Dom Savio, who right now, the Hyundai Elantra driver, currently battling for P3 in the Delta class. P13 overall, he's currently P14, chasing after the position that's being held by Eric Statz, who you see there in the background of the camera, transitioning around to the foreground very shortly. But as they power their way onto the next lap, Savio is gaining at a gradual rate of knots. And how about the lap time comparison this time around as they cross the line? Well, you can see there for Eric Statzer 45.0, meanwhile Dom Savio at 44.725. Savio taking 3 attempts out there and continuing to close. But meanwhile, whilst all that's going on, you can see Francois Schinck here, the B-Bus Energy driver, has dropped down to P10 overall, and he's got David Bauer right behind him here as they make the way towards turn number 1. I think that was a bit of an instant for Francois Schinck in the run to turn number 1. Bauer takes a look up the inside. Schinck leaves the door open. The Veloster driver here trying to outbrake Bauer, but in the end Bauer goes all in on the brakes. Ceramic discs absolutely glowing hot then as they make the way through turn number 5. Well, Francois Schinck being passed there, but I think right now just trying to settle himself back into a rim. We're not quite sure what happened prior to all this, but we can tell you he's definitely been disturbed by it, and now trying to get back into the hunt as they make their way through turn 6 and 7, and Bauer getting the move done then, classic turn 4 fashion. But now has he got the ability to break away for breakfast dinner as they head into the second half of this lap? We're coming down through turn number 9, and Daniel Sodino not too far off of this, and right now the 710 driver definitely trying to match the pace of the two Alphas in front of him, but running wide there at turn number 9 is not going to help in that regard. In fact, that's going to cost him a bit of time. But meanwhile, speaking of time being cost here, well, Eric Statzer right now has got no time to waste anymore as he comes down for 11, in the fact that Dom Savio is close enough to start thinking about a move. And as we ride on board the gearbox here of the privateer at the Honda Steering Type R, that Elantra N, the Hyundai of what is Dom Savio, looming large and close as they make the way out and south and onto the power zone. Uphill they roll. Now in the charge here to turn number 1 once again as the lap times continue to coming in, and with it drivers are setting personal best, particularly James Carr and Matt Shepka so far, both moving into the mid 43s. Well, our deltas by comparison typically lapping inside the 44s, and as Stats here tries to break away from Savio, you can see that gap down to under half a second as they head into turn number 1 this time around. Now, where are the gains being made is the big question, and it does seem as though here Dom Serio a little bit more aggressive on the brakes into turn number 1, and just a bit more fluid in the off-brake into turning point transition as they make the way down through 2 and into 3. It's these medium speed direction changes where Serio really seems to have a command over Statzer, but as they head down the Retro Foster here, conversely, Serio now inching closer and closer. He might be running quite a bit of rear wing on that Elantra. He's not gained as much as perhaps we'd expect, or conversely, Statzer maybe running a bit less rear wing compared to what you would be typically expected to run. But either way, it's a bit closer as he came out of turn number 4. Serio getting close once again as they make the way up towards turn 6 and 7. The two drivers right now neck and neck in terms of their pace on this lap, although Savio does look like he's the bigger threat here as they make the way through turn number 7 up towards 8 they go. And meanwhile, Daniel Sino only 2.8 seconds in front will be conscious of the fact that if Savio is able to make a move here on Statzer, then he could be under threat a little bit later on as they make the way through turn number 9 and Statzer hooking it up. But definitely that pressure does seem to be building. As you can see there, Serio taking a little peek to the inside into turn number 10. Far too far back to be able to consider the move, but definitely right now trying to threaten and intimidate as they head down from Magulo and up towards Jinsao at turn number 12. But rolling the way off then, it looked as though for a brief moment Savio almost losing it coming through the corner, but meanwhile into the pit lane really early on. That is why Wojciech Świrydowicz, he's come on in, although that surely is not for a drive-through penalty. He's decided to go for his pit stop only 17 minutes into this race, and when it releases Logan McKinzie into the lead here. But with that in mind, of course, we've not typically seen pit stops that early in a long time. Normally in the Alpha races, the 60-minute features, we see the pit stops, the early stoppers, the undercutters, if you will, because they're trying to undercut the competition in coming out of the pits and clear out and just deliver the laps. We normally see the undercut strategy play out from around the 22nd minute, perhaps a little bit earlier to the 20th minute, but not 17 minutes in. So I think Świrydowicz feels as though he knows something that we do not. Meanwhile, the overcut, we've seen it go as long sometimes as 48 minutes in today. It's almost 50 in some regards. Indeed, so you remember how long the pit stops took at the Red Bull Ring for our leading drivers who refused to pit until the very end of the race. But either way you cut it, Świrydowicz leaving it as late as possible. And in terms of where he's come on out, he's come out in P11 here, and the privateer right now really having to get a move on. As meanwhile, Jerome Bajula's there up the inside of James Carr, coming out to 9 and up towards 10 they go. He shuts the door there. James Carr gets his nose back in. Bajula's opens the steering. As they make the way out of 10, a bit of a door knock between the two of them. They're side by side in the run down for 11. Bajula's then a bit more contact with Carr, and that gives Shepka the space he needs to come through on the inside. And Shepka there playing the role of the patient hunter as it all unfolds. And oh goodness me, it's not good news. It's two teammates. It's Rhodes and what is their car coming together. And as they make the way up the hill, we pass the seas, and Robert Amons goes for the Moses manoeuvre and comes between the two breakfasts in the drivers and gets the double pass done. But that's not the way you want it to go, and particularly between teammates. And right now Justin Rhodes and James Carr are still in a drag race battle in the run down towards turn number 1. It's going to be Rhodes on the inside here. He pulls onto the racing line, and meanwhile Carr lets it go as they head into turn 1. I think right now neither driver too happy with how that played on out, and it has enabled Robert Owens to gain 2 places and everybody else around them and ahead of them to gain 1 as they make the way onto this next lap. But as they head onto the Retro Foster this time, everything restabilises for a brief moment, and that all comes down to who is going to be making an early pit stop and who can find the way back in. Meanwhile, we see here Francois Schinck battling side by side with David Bell, with Wojciech Świrydowicz closing up behind them, and this is the risk that Świrydowicz has taken here by pitting so early. He will be coming out behind battles in traffic, and as he makes his way into turn at number 4 right now, well, Schinck there being passed back by the outside of David Bell as they make the way through 4, and as they head through 5, they make the way line astern into the next run. But the problem is for Schinck, he either has to think about going defensive versus Świrydowicz to give himself the opportunity to battle Bauer. Alternatively, he has to let Świrydowicz go and hope that Świrydowicz is able to open the door up for him to go on the offensive once again versus Bauer. It's going to be a tricky call here, but as they make the way into turn number 8, he leaves the door there, and it looks like Świrydowicz goes straight up the inside as they make the way down through 9 and in towards 10. I think Schinck here playing the long game rather than trying to get embroiled with drivers already taken. Here's 1 mandatory pit stop for the day. I mean, this is smart from Schinck, to be fair, in the fact that if he plays this right, he may end up with a major opportunity, presuming that David Bell's not able to find a similar place to be able to let Świrydowicz just simply come on through and not lose any race time. As they head into turn number 12, they settle down for a brief moment here as they head on up the hill and to what will be at their 13th lap under race conditions very shortly. But meanwhile, speaking of one driver here under a bit of pressure, we see out towards the rear of the pitch and getting closer, Robert Abrams, P5 overall, under pressure from Justin Rhodes there, your Delta leader, who's P6, as they make the way down through turns 1 and 2. And well, the Delta driver there definitely showing alpha pace and really trying to push on, as my friends watching into the pit lane. So he's decided enough's enough. With Świrydowicz getting on through, it's time to pit. He's going to take a leaf out of Świrydowicz's book, but nobody else opting to come on in yet. Everybody else staying on out. And as we see here, Mark Darnell trying to hold off Adrian Fedorowski. Well, it's gone a bit quiet between these two early on in the race, but right now this battle for P5 in the Delta class, where it's P14 overall, starting to build up. Here's the QZ Motorsports driver, staying close, but not close enough to threaten a move immediately as they make their way through the Curva do Sol. As they come through, meanwhile Świrydowicz up the inside there of David Bauer through turn number 4, side by side through 5, but Świrydowicz already starting to get a nose ahead, but there's Bauer coming on back as they make the way into turn number 6, and Bauer really getting the moves on there, finding the legs out of turns 4 and 5, back up the inside. Świrydowicz takes a look, but he has to go back on the brakes into turn number 7, tries to go around the outside here, and Bauer definitely right now not making this easy, but of course with every little bit of battling, this is going to cost them time, and it could mean that Schink's able to capitalise and jump back ahead. And Bauer come the end of the pit stops as they make the way out of 9. Świrydowicz that time inside of 9 and now to the outside of 10, but Bauer comes back once again on the inside here, but he won't have as much space to play with and therefore less traction to optimise his run out with as they make the way down for 11 and up towards 12, and Świrydowicz finally gets it done, it would seem, but he's got the run to turn number 1 still to worry about. But as they come through the left-hander right now, Bauer definitely really digging his fangs in, and Świrydowicz having to peel them away little by little as he makes his way through turn number 14. He gets it done, and I think Bauer now 2.5 tenths back is close, but he may not be close enough, or if he is, it's going to be a very late move into turn number 1. It's less than 2 tenths, less than 1.5 tenths now. Świrydowicz has to go defensive. The threat is building. It's a 10th, and Bauer looks around the outside here as they make the way onto the brakes, and Świrydowicz holds the inside line and gets the defense done successfully. Meanwhile, there Eric Stats are trying to go round the outside to hold off Dom Savio, who creeps up the inside, and Savio takes what is there P3 in the Delta class, P12 overall in a classic run up the inside into turn number 1, and the number 81 driver here definitely right now making his presence felt versus Stats as they head on down the Retro Posta. But it's going to be another side-by-side run here, and Stats are trying to outrun the Elantra driver. He's got his nose alongside, he's fully alongside now under braking, and as they make the way through turn number 4, Stats comes back and Dom Savio continues to try and find a way past the P3 class driver. And as we ride on board here with the Challenger, the privateer looking around the outside here into turns number 6 and 7. And well, in doing so here, he's even going to try and get the cut back. Alternatively, run it all the way round. In fact, he's going to go all the distance here as they make the way up towards turn number 8. Onto the brakes they go. Deceptive camera angle this one, but you can see Savio there pulling it wide. But Stats are out breaking himself into the corner, and Sarah trying to go for the cutback and then trying to lull Stats into a full sense of security and get him to make a mistake, and he almost does so, but Stats are just rejoining in time, and as they come down through 10 and in towards 11, Stats are really having to get the defence prepared, put up the wall and make sure it cannot be knocked down, because Savio right now is chipping away left, right and centre, and well, they've got Mark Darnell, who is 7 seconds behind them, with Adrian Fedorowski having dropped 2 seconds back off of him. So right now these guys can afford to fight for a bit, but they will have to be mindful that Darnell will gain gradually. As meanwhile into the pits, I look at my commentary move window, is James Carr. He's come into the pits from what was at the time P7, with Micah Hendricks moving up into the aforementioned position. And as they come on through, also David Bauer, and we have got quite a few early pit stops here today, and I think a lot of drivers trying to be mindful of the opportunity to undercut rather than overcut. But as we look back up towards the front of the field, P2 at John Lauzon here, 4.2 seconds of a Logan McKinzie, but I don't think that's what's on his mind right now. I think what's on his mind more so is just breaking away from the rest of the pack that's trying to chase after him as he heads into turn 6 and 7. And he does have a growing gap here, as meanwhile we see there Robert Abrams up the inside of Justin Rhodes. He gets it done as they make the way through turn 6, but Majula's off circuit there, and onto the brakes they go, and it's going to get very nip and tuck here as Robert Abrams has to try and squeeze his way between Woods Majula's, and also as they come down Justin Rhodes and also tap the back of Shepka, as Rhodes there right now being held off by Majula's, but Rhodes going to try and come back on the inside into turn number 10. Majula's goes a little bit later, he turns on in, and Rhodes there trying to come in, but in the end there's only space for one, and well, both drivers would argue they had the right to that space, but either way they've survived it. not about a bit more contact to the front of Rhodes' car. And right now, the breakfast for dinner machine has definitely been knocked about quite a bit. And, well, I don't think anymore they'll be having fried eggs with regards to the state of the car. There'll be more scrambled with regards to that potential damage that's coming on through. But breakfast and food and energies aside, as they make the way through turn at number 14, up towards 1 they go once again. Shepka here on the inside. He goes low as he peeling into the pits. That's the consideration here. And indeed, he comes on in. He lets Abrams go. And I think Shepka's decided if he's going to win this battle to be on the podium overall. And in the Alpha class, it's going to be on strategy. It's not going to be by outright pace at the moment, because battling is going to cost him ever so dear. But meanwhile, speaking of battling, Eric Statzer right now trying to come back versus Dom Savio as they make the way through turn number 15. You see there KT King on the inside, can't really disappear anywhere else, to be fair to the driver, who is a lap down, and King doing their utmost to stay clear but making the way into the pit lane. Meanwhile, Statzer trying to stay close as they head on down through turns 1, 2 and into 3. But the problem for Statzer right now is he can catch up, he can get close and everything there, but the one thing he cannot do at the moment is find a way to come on back. The brakes will only take him so far into braking into each corner in terms of closing up, but he's not able to find that final 5%, and I think he needs Savio to really make a mistake. But for Shepka right now, this is perhaps a bit of a mistake on the strategic recall as he makes his way down towards turn number 4. Strategic, not a word, we just invented one on the strategic call, we should say, as he makes his way down for a turn at number 4 and into 5. The problem is now he's got 2 Delta drivers in front of him who are battling for position. They've yet to pit as well. And can he pick his way past them sooner rather than later, or will they potentially move themselves clear for him by coming into the pits? Well, Savio there under a bit of pressure coming through turn number 6 into 8 as he heads onto the brakes once more, and he goes a bit deep under braking. The doors left open, and Statzer there tries to go around the outside, but the problem for Eric Statzer is he's just not able to find it. And as they come out to turn number 9 up towards 10, well, now Shepka is increasingly closing on this battle as they head on through. There's a lock up there for what is Dom Savio as they make it out of the corner. Statzer gets a nose along the inside to go to the outside, and as they roll the way down, we ride on board here is Shepka, who gets close, but it's not enough as he gets ready to go onto the brakes into Jinsao corner. He thinks about it, but as he comes through turn at number 12, he's not able to get it done. And now this is really starting to hit him hard for the simple reason he wanted clear track, he wanted clear air to be able to try and undercut Abrams, Virgilas, Rhodes and Hendricks in the battle for P3. But all he's got now is 2 Deltas in front who are battling hard, and both not mindful of his race, and they don't have to be fair, they're mindful of their battle to be on the Delta podium. But as they make the way towards turn 1 this time, will Shepka give it everything under braking this time and just simply try and cut his way out the inside? Well, the space is there, and it's very close. He almost makes contact there on the back of Woody Statzer's car, and he just catches it in time. But as they make the way down through 2 and into 3, you can see that Statzer, I think, boosted along a little bit there as he makes his way through 3 and up towards 4. He's going to go for the move this time. It's Statzer on Savio. Savio's on the outside, and as the camera very shortly pans on around, Statzer does everything he needs. There's a bit of contact, there's more contact, and Statzer heads into the wall. He slides across the road, and they take one off of the circuit, and well, that is a disaster for the pair of them. And in the end, it was the 2 drivers starting to get their elbows out, which of course is going to happen in touring car racing. But for Statzer, it's gone so horribly wrong, but it could have been a disaster for Savio, albeit there would have been a whack to the car, and therefore that will cost him quite a bit of bodywork. And I wonder if both drivers may have to consider coming to the pits. Well, Statzer is right now limping on the grass there. I think that suspension is definitely done and dusted, and he will have to be towed to the pits. And meanwhile, from all this, that now means that Dom Savio P3 in class, well, if he's got to come into the pits to repair the car, if it's cost him too much time, then could we see the likes of Mark Darnell and Adrian Fedorowski here as they make the way into turn number 10? Could we see either of them have an opportunity to get onto the podium once again? Well, that will be their challenge. As meanwhile, in terms of Delta drivers leading, Justin Rhodes into the pit lane from what was at the time P5 overall as the race rages on and we get to the halfway point. Now, we do say hello there in the Twitch chat to Obese Nightmare, who says, what a wonderful time to join the broadcast. We're very glad to have you with us, Mr. Nightmare. And well, right now, as we do see Darnell making his way comfortably up towards turn number 1 once again, well, there is the gap to Dom Savio, and it has closed considerably as Savio immediately reacting and coming into the pit. And I think there will be some repair work taken as Darnell carries on his way as he heads up towards turn number 1. Now heading in towards the braking zone here, we can see meanwhile Francois Schink and Adrian Fedorowski exchanging places, and I think Fedorowski there being mindful of the fact that Schink has already taken his pit stop, so if he was to hold Schink up, what would be the value in it other than cost himself race time? It cost the pair of them, and it wouldn't work to either their mutual advantages as they make their way through turns 3 and 4. Fedorowski really playing with a smart head on as they make their way down towards turn number 4, but in the charge meanwhile, we look a little bit further back to Kirk Lane here, who has got closing up behind him Jacob Wally, and remember of course Wally having that 28-second stop and go for quote-unquote jumping the start, albeit the car rolled backwards not forwards, and as he makes his way through turn number 3, up the inside there for breakfast and dinner versus the privateer from Team Bear Pope, and he takes the place off a lane, albeit he's a long way off of the leader at the moment, and indeed the podium, but Wally definitely trying to get back into this race, albeit he's been in the pits once, and remember he will have to come in again effectively to take his mandatory pit stop for fuel, but doing everything he can in order to try and make his way into a bit of a recovery position. But as he heads up towards turns at 6 and 7, rolling his way through the double right, now his next target will be David Bauer. Alternatively, it will be Adrian Fedorowski, who does sit 18 seconds further up the road. But coming on through the right-hander there of turn number 8, and down through 9 he goes, the left-hander. We look at Robert Abrams here in P3, and the Yellow Flag Motorsports driver right now holding off Jerome Bajulas. As we said earlier, it's been some time since we have seen Robert Abrams go racing in this season. He was there in earlier rounds, but has had to take a brief break as he makes his way on and back into the tarmac tonight. I think everyone was smiling down the paddock to see one of the legends of the series taken to the tarmac once again. It's not quite the same without Robert Abrams, it must be said, and the Yellow Flag Motorsports driver definitely showing that it's not quite the same without him at the moment, in the fact running in P3 in terms of track position versus Jerome Bajulas, and this is what we love to see, having made his way all the way out the field from P11 on the grid to start with, and right into the fight for a potential top 5 overall, if not an overall podium as well. But as he makes his way on through the right-hander turn about in down towards 9, he does have some stiff competition, including Jerome Bajulas and Micah Hendricks. As we say hello there to bot_14 in the Twitch chat, who's commenting on Matt Shepka's save on the car with that near miss contact on the back of Eric Statzer, and I do believe that Matt Shepka is Obese Nightmare in the Twitch chat as they make their way on down through turn number 11 in towards 12. But coming on through here, all 3 drivers right now of Hendricks at the back, and in between Abrams and himself Jerome Bajulas all continue to deliver the laps corner after corner, and who is going to be the first one to flinch and say enough's enough, I need to come into the pits? Well, whoever does here, they may gain themselves an advantage. It depends on where they come out in the order. And you can see there on the circuit map in the top right corner of your screen how we do have the field now starting to space out into multiple packs, and as a result that means our drivers will need to pit and try and find themselves into some clear track space, albeit there's not too much clear track between each of the packs here, so it does really start to become a question of, do you go early or do you try to be the last guy who goes on in? As meanwhile, speaking of going off, Spencer Cockayne there for Assholes Motorsports making a long run down out of turn number 2 and up towards 3. I think a mistake that cost him a bit dear. But meanwhile, we look back to Robert Abrams here, battling side by side with Jerome Bajulas. Bajulas up the inside here, under braking into turn number 4. Abrams doesn't fight it too hard. He lets it go. I think conscious now of the fact there's bigger things at stake here in terms of race time and strategy rather than track position. And as we ride on board and look back from the B+ Energy driver Jerome Bajulas in the 99 car, heading into turn 6 and 7, you'll see there that Hendricks also looking to get involved as he makes his way up through 7 and into 8, but tucks in behind as Bajulas defends. And a little bit of defence here, it may go a long way in holding track position right now, but will it cost him some race time? As they make the way through turn number 9 and up towards 10. We are into the second half of this race. We still do have 26 minutes plus the final lap to go. And as they come down through turn number 10, we still do have our top 5 yet to pit. Also Daniel Stino in P8 yet to pit, and Mark Donnell in P11. And also I believe Adrian Fedorowski and Jacob Wally in P14, P15 respectively. But the majority of drivers have pitted as they make the way on through. And the race continues to intensify here in Interlagos. And as we see at the number 99, Bajulas make his way successfully out of turn number 12 and starting to break away, rolling their way up towards turn number 1 and bringing it over to the side here. And it's Bajulas signaling he's coming into the pits. Is he coming in? Nice and no, in fact he stays out, but meanwhile Hendricks does come on in, so he's the first of the trio to decide enough's enough. He's going to show his hand, and now it will be about the reaction between Bajulas and Abrams in terms of, do they feel they need to respond to him, or do they just keep on going until the fuel tank says no, we can't go any further? Once they make their way down for turn number 3, neither driver right now really getting an advantage over the the other. Both of them pushing one another to the utmost. Meanwhile, further back, we have Francois Schinck here trying to find his way past Mark Darnell. Remember that Darnell has yet to pit, and as Darnell keeps it over on the inside, then the run to Kink of 15. Will Darnell be coming on in? Well, Schinck either way is going to try and go high and around. Darnell is into the pits, and the Bivas Energy Driver earned the 18 car here. Carries on his merry way with David Bow just behind as they break the way into turn number 1. But of course, for these two, much like Shepka, who's just up the road coming out of turn number 3, their big focus here is on trying to gain race time back in order to try and get the jump on the likes of Hendricks and also Bajulaz and Abrams. But speaking of Hendricks, he's come out of the pits, and he's come out of the pits 6 seconds up the road from Shepka. And here is Micah Hendricks, who has got behind him Justin Rhodes. And Hendricks nailing that pit stop as Darnell is leaving the pit lane right now, down in P17 overall, P7 in class. But Hendricks rolling up through turn 6 and 7 into 8 onto the brakes, and as he comes on through the right-hander, well, the Alpha driver doing everything right now, making that strategic call at the right time. And could this be an opportunity to be right up there on the podium at the finish? My gut feeling says he will be emerging side by side with what is Robert Abrams and Jerome Bajulaz. When they come into the pits and exit, he is going to be getting right back in. But as they're coming down through turn number 11 at the moment, Hendricks has to put every lap together to enable that dream to come to fruition. But in terms of our battles at the moment, the close ones on the circuit, there's only 2 drivers right now really close together, and that's Jerome Bajulaz and Robert Abrams in the battle for P3. But again, after seeing Bajulaz make the move on Abrams, only a couple of laps to go. Both of them, I think, right now ready with that long-term mindset in terms of when is the pit stop going to come as they head up towards the next corner. Charging on down towards turn number 4. Well, Bajulaz looking comfortable, but with 3 tenths of a second between the two of them, that comfort is not going to be very reassuring for Bajulaz as he heads on down through 4 and 5. Meanwhile, a bit further back, we do have David Bow gradually closing up to Francois Schinck as the lap times coming in for what was their 21st lap. Schinck there with 44.204. Meanwhile, Bow with 43.903, gains 3 tenths there. And David Bow right now definitely putting the hammer down with regards to going after Schinck. And well, in terms of places of opportunity, in terms of where he could potentially finish, if he carries on this way and finds his way past Francois Schinck, that will effectively mean he does have an opportunity to finish just inside the top 10. But both of these drivers here right now really trying to pick up those last points in the overall top 10 as their races have not gone, I think, the way they've necessarily wanted them to, given the battles earlier on. But meanwhile, Hendricks there, where he's got Daniel Sedino, and he's just found his way past his teammate. I think Sedino doing the least amount of work there in order to try and hold Hendricks behind. You can completely understand why, as Sedino's yet to take a pit stop, and they're not in the same race as one another. As meanwhile now Sedino will probably look to try and keep Rhodes behind a little bit, just to give Hendricks a bit of breathing room, albeit he can't keep Rhodes behind him for long because he still does need to pit. Meanwhile, Justin Rhodes has already pitted, so this will confirm that Rhodes will take back the lead of the Delta class soon. But meanwhile, speaking of battles for P3 and lead them into turn number 1, well, Bajulaz they're defending. Meanwhile, Abrams trying to look around the outside as they head onto the brakes here, and as they come down through the drop into the centre S, well, you can see how Abrams ever so close and really no signs of abating right now as they head through 3 and we jump on board. Now powering his way out to turn number 3 and up towards 4 here, up shifting near to the maximum RPM that's available to the engine. Well, the Yellow Flag Motorsports driver here still pushing on, but lifting and coasting here as he comes off the throttle about 75 metres before his braking zone. Slides the car and in a bit of understeer, creeps in, and he just about keeps it together there. But the key thing there, with that lifting off the throttle and just coasting the car on through, Abrams definitely now trying to save as much fuel as he can, where he can, and give himself that opportunity to be able to jump ahead of Bajulaz based on the strategy. I think he feels as though if he comes back out behind Bajulaz, it may not be possible to get the job done until the very last laps in terms of putting that pressure on for so long. And Abrams here wanting to do it the easy way as they make their way through 9 and up into 10. Who can blame him? Because they made the way up into turn at number 10 at the moment. Well, both drivers close there as Abrams gets extremely close under braking, squirming on that front end. I think Bajulaz is braking a little bit early there to try and preserve the front tyres of the car as they come down for 11 and into 12. Both drivers here right on the limit in terms of their laps and the control they're putting through the car at the moment. Both of them trying to find that lap time and also make those fuel tanks go a little bit longer as they head towards the timeline this time around. Up the rise they go through the kink of 14, and will we see either one of them defect their way into the pits? Well, It does look as though Bajula's there, just holding that low inside line, not showing any signs of pitting. He defends. Meanwhile, Abrams having to go around the outside again, but this time Abrams has got a lot more of a run, but he lifts off the throttle there, and Abrams definitely mindful right now. He needs to fuel save, because I think he feels like this battle is going to cost him too long, but otherwise, could he come into the pits now and potentially make the jump on strategy? That's the question, given the fact that he does seem to have just a little bit more pace, despite the fuel conservation he's applying to his race, but he just cannot seem to find a way past Bajula's. And of course, we do have to keep in mind that Micah Hendricks is the driver who'll be gaining from all of this lap after lap, presumably, given the fact that he's not racing anyone at the moment out on circuit. He's running in clear air and is able to put the lap times in. And to give you a relative comparison, for Bajula's on that last lap of 44.06, Abrams of 44.07, Hendricks meanwhile of 43.69. Hendricks is gaining a couple attempts, if not more, a lap, and that will effectively mean that he could jump the pair of them, as we see James Carr and Hendricks right now both making the way into turns 4 and 5 respectively. And as the Hassel's Motorsport driving gives pursuit of James Carr, well, James Carr at the moment 3 tenths a lap slower compared to Hendricks, so it is all going to come back together. But the question will be, who will it be who is in P3 when they all finish their pit stops? Will it be James Carr? Will it be Micah Hendricks? Well, of course, if Hendricks wants to get into P3 and he does not come out behind, whereas Abrams and Bajula's when all is said and done, he'll need to make the pass on James Carr now before those pit stops occur. Or will it be one of Jerome Bajula's and Robert Abrams who have yet to pit, as John Lauzon meanwhile quite comfortably ahead of that battle for P3. Here he is in P2. Just carrying on at the moment with Logan McKinzie a bit further up the road in the lead of the race. As they make their way across the timeline still, and Lauzon takes another lap to his tally. Logan McKinzie, meanwhile, 5.5 seconds up the road from the Buzz Energy driver, and this is the John Lauzon that we have seen all season, but this is the completely unfiltered in terms of not having any of that misfortune applied to his racing, and this is where John Lauzon is in his best element, just banging those laps one after the other. And to give you an idea of his pace right now, he is the 3rd fastest driver out on the circuit, only literally 100th slower than Logan McKinzie. We're talking about 200ths, and almost matching Wojciech Świrydowicz's pace. Świrydowicz the fastest driver out on the circuit, only by a single tenth, and that is where Lauzon really thrives as he makes his way up towards turn number 6. As he comes on through, we look a little bit further back down the order here to Dom Savio versus Mark Darnell, and well, since their pit stops, of course, we said about Dom Savio having that damage on the car after the contact with Eric Stanzer, and that damage has dropped him behind Darnell, who right now P6 in the Delta class, P16 overall, trying to keep Savio at bay as they make the way into turn number 12. But I think it won't be too long before Savio tries to look for the opportunity. Meanwhile, in terms of other news in the Delta class, Kirk Lane yet to pit in P5, P15 overall. Jacob Wally, meanwhile, because we are expecting one more pit stop forward, given the fact he came in for what was a stop and go penalty, and therefore Wally is not taken on fuel as we understand it. And that was, of course, for the quote-unquote jump start at the start, albeit the car rolling backwards. And meanwhile, Adrian Fedorowski, who has yet to take a pit stop as well in P3, and Daniel Cedeno leading the Delta class, who's yet to take a pit stop, with Justin Rhodes in P9, 2nd place in the class, having already pitted. So right now, for Dom Savio, it's all about trying to find his way past Mark Darnell and then pushing on as much as possible to see how much time he can recover after that instant early on in the race. But meanwhile, speaking of pit stops, into his pit box comes Logan at McKinzie, and also does John Lauzon, as both drivers there head to their respective pit stalls. Meanwhile, Jerome Bajula's goes on to lead a lap of this race, and he'll look to pick up that bonus point. That's why some of them do go as long as they possibly can, because they do want the extra point. As meanwhile, Abrams there taking to the grass slightly in the drop out of 1 and 2 and into turn 3. But meanwhile, behind him and closing at a rapid rate of knots by 1 second a lap almost. The previously, Wojciech Świrydowicz here, who's just gone purple with 42.94. He knows the opportunity's coming here, but the problem is if he gets too close to these guys, well, he may find himself becoming embroiled in a battle that he never needs to be a part of. Here in effect, he has already jumped on the strategies they have to pit at some point between now and the end of the race. But as they head up towards turn number 6, we see them rolling on through, and we also see John Laz on the YouTube chat there saying back in the Hyundai Elantra, could not make the Honda of Veloster work for me. Well, John, it does look as though the Elantra is working for you, and we're pleased to see you flying on high for Buzz Energy. But as we see Wojciech Świrydowicz here closing up even more to the back of his 2 Elantra peers in front of Abrams and Bajula's. Well, I wonder how long it'll be before they decide it's time to come into the pits, because Świrydowicz is right there and is only going to interfere in their battling aspirations for what should be effectively a battle for P3. But as they make the way down for turn number 11 into 12, well, right now Świrydowicz is right there and looking to threaten. But as they come through, we look to Adrian Fedorowski coming out of the pit lane here and dipping his way on through turns 2 and 3 from the pit lane, as Kirk Lane there going around the outside. Lane yet to take a pit stop, to be fair, and therefore right now taking track position up to P4 in class, P14 overall. But the Delta driver 9, that is going to be temporary, because when he takes his pit stop he will drop down the order again. But meanwhile, speaking of drivers who are not dropping at all, well right now Wojciech Świrydowicz a 42.670. That is absolutely staggering. And Świrydowicz makes his way through turn number 3 at the moment. I wonder if there was a bit of draft involved over the back of McKinzie, but that's not to besmirch his lap. It just goes to show just how hard he's pushing right now with less fuel in the car and the tyres really worn in. And as Świrydowicz heads up towards turn number 4, Robert Abrams leaving the pit lane. Well, he's come up behind Micah Hendricks, and Hendricks there has jumped ahead of Robert Abrams. He's played this smart as Hendricks, and now his next target, of course, is James Carr in the run on down through turn number 3 into 4. James Carr still 2.5 seconds up the road. 14 minutes left on the clock plus the final lap. And there still is the big question of what is the tyre degradation for our respective cars out there. And, well, anybody in the Elantra, I think, will be starting to feel the pinch with regards to tyre wear. And those lap times may start to gradually decay. As we see here, James Carr carrying on his way through turns 6 and 7, chasing after John Lauzon. And Lauzon by comparison here as he comes on through the right hand and down into turn number 8. We can't really use this previous lap as a comparator, given it was a pit lane lap. But he is right now, John Lauzon, being reeled in little by James Carr, it would seem. As meanwhile, we look back to P13 overall in the battle for P12 overall. It's Jacob Wally who is our focus of attention, chasing after Daniel Sedino. This is the battle for P2 in the Delta cars, but do keep in mind the Brentford Sedino driver as he goes up the inside there. Sedino makes a small mistake coming through turn number 4 and has to resettle the car before he returns to race 9. Keep in mind that Wally has made one pit stop, albeit right at the start of the race, and we are expecting that he will have to come in at some point unless we're incorrect. But as he makes his way on in, speaking of coming on in, Jerome Bajulaz makes his way down the pit lane and heads towards his box. His time has come. He releases Wojciech Świrydowicz back into lead this race, and where will Bajulaz come on through? As meanwhile, Logan at McKinzie storms on through to retake P2 of this race, and as he comes on down the hill, right now the Yellow Flag Motorsports driver doing everything right in terms of that P2 finishing position, as we look to John Lauzon making his way down and through, and also James Carr, and meanwhile Jerome Bajulaz comes on through turn number 2 from the pit lane. Micah Hendricks meanwhile goes around the outside, and that goes to show you that by going short rather than long, and Hendricks gifting himself some clear air, not worrying about the battling, that 4.73, the Veloster driver has got it right, and now the Hassels Motorsports driver will have Bajulaz only about 7 tenths behind him, but he also has a clear shot in the run versus Carr and Lauzon for P3 come the end of this race, and they've still got time. This battle's not over yet. We may have a little bit of peace right now, but as they say, this is the calm before the storm, and the storm is on the horizon. But as they make the way up through turn 6 and 7 and heading up towards turn number 8 for Micah Hendricks right now, it's about head down, put those laps in, because he's got the graph to do it. He's going to have approximately 7 more laps to go, and as he comes through turn number 9, there's a podium on the cards. After going from the back of the field, of course, not being permitted to take part in qualifying with the switch back to the Hyundai Veloster N. But you can imagine right now he'll be absolutely chuffed if he's able to make it a run from what was P20 on the grid to P3 come the finish. Can he achieve it, however? Time will tell. But as he heads on up towards turn number 12, Jerome Bajulaz trying to stay close to his rival here. Bajulaz will want to be brought up into that battle and also try to interfere. And Robert Abrams there a further 2 seconds back, and right now the Yellow Flag Motorsports driver's strategy has not paid off the way he's perhaps wanted it to, albeit he's been arm's reach of this battle that's building, but he's a lot further back than I think he may have anticipated, given the fuel saving he was conducting as part of his strategy. But still, you may have a bit of extra fuel in the car now. Perhaps he overfueled the car so that way he can use all the gear range, all the RPM range on the final few laps. We'll have to wait and see. As meanwhile, John Lauzon here gradually still being reeled in by James Carr. 1:10 faster on that lap compared to Logan McKinzie, you see there, who is 5 seconds off in the distance but gradually being closed into. But meanwhile, Lauzon is being closed up by James Carr as they make the way into turn number 4 here. And the problem is now these two battle, they may just find themselves being squandered in their aspirations to keep it only a two-way battle for P3 and instead open up the floodgates, so it'll be a 3, 4 or 5 car battle for P3 right at the finish. But meanwhile, on call, Jacob Wally comes into the pit lane here for his scheduled stop. It'll be his second visit to the pit lane in the race, but it's been a great recovery drive so far. Adrian Fedorowski quite a way back in the run through turn 14 at the moment, so Wally may actually come out in P3 in class as Ryan Hayes left his pit box, and Fedorowski's just making his way across the timeline, so Wally would have done a lot of recovery work. He won't quite catch up to Daniel Cedeno unless Cedeno makes a mistake at this point onwards, and well, given the run of consistency that Cedeno's had, I don't think there's going to be any mistakes coming from the Hassel's Motorsports driver, but Fedorowski doing everything right here, and it's not enough to jump back ahead of Wally. Instead, Jacob Wally jumping all the way back to P3 in the Delta class, P13 overall with 10 minutes to go. Well, as he comes on down here and looks to conclude his race on a positive note. Meanwhile, we look to Jerome Bajulaz and Micah Hendricks, and Hendricks has gone wide out of turn 12, and Bajulaz gets ahead here as they make the way onwards towards the next lap. Well, it's an unexpected error from Hendricks, but it's cost him dear. And meanwhile, Lauzon versus Carr. It's kicking off here as they make the way to turn number 1, and we ride on board the gearbox of the B-Buzz Energy driver. So coming down through turns 1 and 2 here, through the flick of the right hand of the centrist and onto the Curva del Sol. Lauzon now really up against it, and this is where the lap times could potentially start to plummet ever more as they charge down the Retroposta. Now what can Lauzon do? What choices does he have here? Does he go full defence? Does he let it go? I think he's got to go defensive for the simple reason that based on the pace we saw of these two when they were running in clear air before they started to come together, there were signs that James Carr was the faster driver by a couple of attempts a lap. So I think if Lauzon lets this go, he'll simply just lose P3 and he'll never see it again. So as they make the way up towards turn 6 and 7, he's now got to make his car ever more wide than it already is and try to back Carr and himself into Jerome Bajulaz. The gap 4.1 seconds at the moment as they come on through, getting ever closer as James Carr differences alliance, and as they make the way down through turn number 9 and up towards 10, they go shortly with James Carr really trying to put the pressure on by the dozen as he heads into turn number 10 at the moment. Same line for the two here, and you can imagine if he can't get this done soon, then he may just find himself having to drop off the pace slightly towards the end as he rolls his way down through the left hand of turn number 11. But into 12 they go, both on the brakes. They're both using as much whip to the corner entry as possible, and as they exit on out, nothing between them. James Carr using a little bit more of the space available to him, but John Lauzon getting a very good run off the corner, and it neutralises the two, and now it's purely slipstream that will make the difference as they head up towards turn number 1. Gap coming down quite rapidly here, in fact, as James Carr really shifts it up a gear. Now the gap going down from 4 attempts to 2 attempts as they get to the timing line, and as they get ready to battle on the brakes here, Lauzon covers off the outside. James Carr thinks about it, he got the itch there, but he decided not to go for it, and instead just held off going for it as he made his way down through turn number 3 and into turn number 2 and into 3. But the key thing for James Carr is he's definitely now trying to size up his opponent. He has time, he has an opportunity, he has space to play with, and that's a nice place to be in when you're on the offensive. Of course, he won't want to wait forever, he won't want to leave it to the last lap, but he's got 2 to 3 laps where he can really tee up this pass and make sure it's teed up to perfection. Meanwhile, behind them we can see Micah Hendricks still chasing after Jerome Bajulaz as they come on down. And as they roll the way out to turn 4 and 5 and up towards 6, 7, well, the problem for Hendricks at the moment is, as ever close as he is, he just cannot seem to find a way to get close enough to really put the counter-attack onto Jerome Bajulaz at the moment. But as they make the way through turn 6 and 7, also Robert Abrams, he has to be wary of the fact that the Yellow Flag Motorsports driver is still 2.1 seconds behind and showing no signs of going away anytime soon. Albeit Abrams' pace on the last lap was a couple of attempts slower compared to Hendricks and Bajulaz, so perhaps Abrams is starting to fall away in terms of pace. Meanwhile, whilst all this is going on, we're hearing that David Bowers had to retire from the race due to technical issues, which is a disaster for the Alpha driver, Brett Verdin. That's going to drop him from what was a potential finishing position of P11 overall all the way down to effectively what will be P18 or 19 in the stands. In fact, we can confirm it will be P19, given that Spencer Cocaine's currently running P19 a lap down on our leaders, but not the way the Breakfast for Dinner drivers wanted it to go, as meanwhile here, Jerome Bajulaz still under pressure from Hendricks as they head up towards turn number 1. They charge them through at this time. You can see Hendricks there pulling all the way out, I think trying to signal to Bajulaz, look, let's not fight. We've got more ahead of us here. I'm not going to fight you right now. Hendricks being really smart about where he's putting the car here to give signals to Bajulaz. The B-Buzz Energy driver, of course, not complying to him immediately in case it's a trap, but as he makes his way through turn 3 and down towards 4, I think the challenge here is if these two can catch up to Lauzon Carr, well, then we will have an absolutely climactic battle right at the finish, but time is ticking on here. here, and as they head up towards turn number 4 this time around, I think if Hendricks is going to go for it, he may need to do it sooner rather than later, because I don't think Bajulaz right now is just going to simply roll over on this one as they make the way through turn 5. We ride on board here with the Hassel's Motorsports Veloster, and they head into 6-7. Two downshifts there from Hendricks. He tries to close up, getting a nice smooth run there, hitting both apexes and getting as close as he's ever been. Looks around the outside, it goes all the way on the brakes, but there's only really one line through turn number 8, and the outside there, well, your opponent on the inside's got to really go slow off the corner apex, and feels like they can't take the whole run out the corner for it to work, and there Hendricks having to back off. Didn't quite work out, but he stays close. They make the way through turn number 10. The gap never going above a whole second at the moment. Meanwhile, we look to John Lauzon holding on to P3 for Beaver Buzz Energy as he comes on through the left hand here in turn number 12. Made his way on through, and we can see there James Carr almost stepping a bit too wide. As meanwhile, new fastest lap of the race for Wojciech Świrydowicz at 42.648. He goes ever faster. And just putting in the numbers lap after lap of Świrydowicz, as he's now got a gap of almost 15.6 seconds over Logan McKinzie, as we see McKinzie there in the foreground, making his way down into turn at number 1. But meanwhile, James Carr coming in hot on the brakes here. He thinks about it this time and goes for a potential lunge, but John Lauzon completely unfazed, does not look at it, does not show it any care and consideration, and just says, well, that's interesting, but I'm going to take my race in line. And as they make the way through 3 and down towards 4, Lauzon, I think, feels like he's in control of this for the time being, but James Carr trying to come back up as we ride on board with the breakfast within the driver, and as they power their way down the Retro Poster right now, no way for it to turn number 4, but it's coming. James Carr keeps getting closer and closer every lap he goes on to, but with it, of course, time trickles down. Front tyre life also goes to waste, and as they make the way out towards turn 6 and 7, just how much has James Carr got left in the tank to deliver as he makes his way through 6, gets the cut back into 7, but Lauzon covers him off there, and as they battle their way onto the brakes into turn number 8, right now Lauzon finding every defensive manoeuvre in the book here at Interlagos and throwing it back at James Carr as he goes a bit deep. There does Lauzon, but Carr can't capitalise, and as they make the way out to 9 into 10, Carr looks around the outside, makes John Lauzon go defensive here. They break the way on in. Carr looks to the cutback. Lauzon covers him off once again, but they're definitely dragging the pace out of their race now. And already Bajulaz has closed up by a whole second with this battling as they make the way down towards turn number 12. They head on down. Meanwhile, a bit further back, Dom Sever and Adrian Federowski are coming together in the battle of what is P4 in the Delta class. We're keeping an eye on that. We continue to ride on board here with James Carr as he heads up towards turn number 1. Gap 3 temps as he exits through the kink of 13. Route 14 they go, and James Carr here has the toe, he has the speed, he has the lack of downforce, and as they roar all the way to the start finish straight, now 1.5 tenths, they head to the timeline. Lauzon knows it's coming, he defends to the left hand side, Carr thinks about it, he swings to the right, Lauzon tucks in on the inside, they battle on the brakes, and as they come down, Carr tries to go all the way around the outside, but he can't quite find it as Lauzon covers it off again, but James Carr this time trying to tease it out of him, and now he knows he's got the run, he just needs to find the right place to deliver it. Meanwhile, further back, Adrian Federowski still holding off Dom Savio, but Savio up the inside and it's turn number 8, and I think capitalising there as Federowski being caught sleeping almost. And Savio goes on through and takes P4 back in the Delta class. But meanwhile, in the battle for P5 over on in the Alphas, we can see there Hendricks up the inside and Bajulaz there being caught out as they make the way through 4-5. One more lap after this to go. And as they charge their way up the hill, Bajulaz tries to come back now on the inside into turn 6 and 7. It's a battle on the brakes here. Bajulaz has a nose ahead, but Hendricks carries the speed around the outside. The one thing the Veloster can do very well is race offline as they make the way through 7. Bajulaz defending, digging in deep here as Abrams, who was 3 seconds back, now sits 2.1 seconds back as they make the way out to turn 8 and into 9. And as they come down through the left-hander, Bajulaz continues to fend off his rival for now. But for how long can he continue to do it before Hendricks does find a way through? There's only one more lap to find out that question's answer as they head on through turn number 10. And Bajulaz right now, much like John Lauzon, the two Beaver Buzz energy drives under pressure, but showing no signs of capitulating under said pressure. As meanwhile, our race leader, Wojciech Świrydowicz, roars his way onto his final lap, and today he goes on to lap 35 with an advantage of almost 17 seconds, and the privateer showing no signs of slowing down. Meanwhile, speaking of slowing down, in the battle for P3, John Lauzon a whole second clear of James Carr. I think a mistake from James Carr and perhaps tyre degradation as well, finally finding its place and taking effect. As meanwhile there you can see in the rear of the picture, Hendricks all over the back of Jerome Bajulaz, slithering left and right, and as they make the way into turn at number 1, Hendricks can't seem to to find a way on the inside. He looks outside, but he looks back to the inside now into turn number 2. And Pajulas there just simply keeping the car right in the most inconvenient space for Hendricks, which is right on the lines he wants to take to get the move done. But as they make the way onto the retro post there, Hendricks still there, still within 2 tenths. And as they make the way out towards turn number 4, we're not close enough now. And on the brakes coming up as well. As you see there, Robert Abrams getting closer and closer. Now 1.5 seconds as they make the way through the left-hander of 4. And as they head up towards turns 5 and 6, well, Pajulas, they're not getting the run he wanted off of turn number 4, but he's got the inside as they head into the double right-hander here, and that's all he needs to make Hendricks go a little bit deep and therefore lose his pace around the outside as they head through 7 and up towards 8. And Pajulas here just needs to narrow his braking zones from this point onwards and get the exit he deserves out of turn number 12. But as he makes his way towards turn 12 gradually, meanwhile, we look from the battle for P5 to your race leader, who right now, as he comes on through the last couple of corners, he's been unstoppable once again, put it on pole by considerable margin. And as the checker flag waves, it's Wojciech Świrydowicz, the privateer from Poland, who takes the winner Interlagos by a staggering 17.5 seconds in the overall and alpha categories as he comes across the line there, jubilant in his rapport. And then we see Logan McKinzie, second place again, and really making that run of form. If it's Świrydowicz who takes the win, it will be McKinzie who takes second as he crosses the line. Then a brilliant drive for Yellow Flag Motorsports. John Lowes on P3 in the Bivas Energy Elantra, back on podium form, ahead of James Carr P4. Jerome Bajaj will hold off Micah Hendricks to line for P5 in a brilliant battle to the end. And then Robert Abrams is returned to the series P7 as meanwhile Justin Rhodes crosses the line. Another win in the Delta class there. Congratulations to him, P8 overall, ahead of Matt Shepka P9, the Torque Steer Racing driver. And then Francois Schenk will come through shortly to complete the top 10 overall finishing positions as he makes his way onwards towards the line. But as he crosses over there, we still have some more battling going on, including Daniel Sedino right now making his way up towards turn number 12, and well, right now second place in the Delta class. And he's been doing everything right in terms of running this position from start to finish. And as he heads on up the hill, where we're hearing there's been another exchange for position a bit further back. Dom Savio, in fact, has had a very late retirement and is going to finish P15 in, as we've already had both Kirk Lane and Spencer Cockayne finish their races. But Daniel Sedino takes his P2 in the Delta class for Hassel's Motorsports, P11 overall. And then very shortly, we will have Adrian Fedorowski coming through the final couple of corners. It's been some time since we've seen him on the podium in the Deltas, but he returns there today as he comes to line. He held off the charge of Dom Savio. He crosses P12 overall. Eric Statzer behind, a lap down, P17 overall, P8 in the Delta class. And then Jacob Welling then recovers to P4 in the Deltas. Not his day today. A brilliant recovery drive for the breakfast dinner drive ahead of Mark Darnell, the privateer, and that completes our finishers with the retirement of Dom Savio. So 14 that finished in the end on the lead lap. What a brilliant race from start to finish. And well, for Wojciech Świrydowicz, it is another trophy, another win on the way to what looks to be a championship crown that is coming his way. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for us to take a look back at our race results, subject to any stewards' inquiries, and here they are. So as our results do come on in, we can see that Wojciech Świrydowicz in the end in round 9 of 13 in season 6 of the Alpha Touring Challenge, as brought to you on iRacing, taking the win by 17.6 seconds in the end over the Yellow Flag Motorsports driver of Logan McKinzie. McKinzie doing everything in his power today to try and keep Wojciech Świrydowicz honest, but in the end had to spend a bit more time focusing behind him, but it's not such a bad thing when he's proving the point and held on to P2 to the very finish, with John Lowes on there back on flying form for Bivas Energy in P3 in the 77 Canadian machine. 22 seconds off the winner, but he won't mind too much about that. He'll be happy about the fact he held off James Carr to line, who misses out on a podium for breakfast for dinner, but at the same time still knows that he was in the fight today to be on both the overall and the Alpha podium. Jerome Bajaj in P5 there, the Bivas Energy driver, doing a brilliant job to have a stalwart defence to hold off Micah Hendricks to line, with the Hassel's Motorsports driver only finishing P6 in the end, despite the charge. It didn't quite work out with regards to the strategy today. And then Robert Abrams, P7 there for Yellow Flag Motorsports, being able to bring home a good good result on his return to the series, and we can expect plenty more from him going deeper and deeper into the rest of the championship campaign. Justin Rhodes there, P8 overall, your Delta winner, taking the win once again for breakfast for dinner. A great result for him, and continuing to progress his championship campaign towards its ultimate conclusion, he would argue, with Matt Shepka there for Talk Steer Racing P9, right in the battle for the top 5 early on, but in the end coming out alone and then a bit of traffic and having to navigate that, it cost him dear and cost him the time he needed to get back into the battle for the top 5. Francois Schinck there for Beavers Energy at P10 there to complete our overall top 10. Head of Best Rest, Daniel Sodino, P11 overall, but P2 in the Delta class for Hassel's Motorsports, and just ahead of Adrian Fedorowski there for QZ Motorsports, returning to the Delta podium. It's been some time since we've seen him there, but taking up P12 overall, head of Jacob Wiley and Mark Darnell, and those were your 14 finishers on the lead lap. We also had Dom Seru, who retired a lap from the end, finishing at P15, the privateer, ahead of Kirk Lane, Eric Stats at P17, and then Spencer Cocaine finishing 2 laps down, but never giving up, P18 for Hassel's Motorsports, ahead of David Bell for breakfast for dinner with that late retirement, 6 laps on the finish, and we also had the retirements of KT King, the privateer, P20, and Mark Crawford, who wasn't able to make it to the grid due to technical issues with the car. But a very, very close race from all of our drivers. A fantastic race here today at the Interlagos circuit, and well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, the big question you may be asking now is, how does this change up the championship standings? Well, after 9 rounds of 13, we now give you an update, and we can see here that after the race at Interlagos, Wojciech Świrydowicz continues to lead the championship, albeit by an increased margin now that is extended to 56 points over Logan McKinzie. We drop scores in effect, of course. That means the advantage that Świrydowicz has right now is stronger than it would have been earlier in the season, because to improve scores now, you do have to effectively beat your personal drop scores, and Logan McKinzie will know that opportunity to bring Świrydowicz back down into the pack is being reduced round after round. Logan McKinzie as well, we need to be wary of the fact that he's jumped back up into P2 quite recently, and that is as of this round ahead of Micah Hendricks by a single point. So it does look as though now the bigger question is who is going to finish P2 in the championship behind Świrydowicz, and Hendricks there only a point off, will be looking to come right back at Logan McKinzie next time out. James Carr in P4 there on 393 points, not too far off of the battle for P2, only separated from it by 15 points, and then it's Francois Schinck, who is a further, 44 points behind, holding on to P5 at the moment, in a bit of no man's land. He's got a sizable advantage over Justin Rhodes behind, but also is way off the pace now in terms of that battle for P2, but he'll try and get as close as possible to it as time continues on. Justin Rhodes, our Delta Championship leader, now moves into P6, and Justin Rhodes really demonstrating all the pace and racecraft coming together in the Delta class. And definitely right now making his case to be our Delta champion with a couple of rounds to go. 3 points clear of Connor Achitella there, with Achitella only ahead of teammate Robert Abrams based on result count back in the battle for P7. 10 points behind him is Talk Steer Racing's Matthew Shepka, who has returned to P9 in the championship, and 9 points clear of Jerome Bajulaz. And outside the top 10 in best rest position P11, David Bauer there on 249 points. Not to be his day today, with that retirement costing him some important points, and he is ahead of Kurt Smith there by an advantage of 62 points, with the second place Delta driver not in attendance today, but still holding on to P2 ahead of Eric Statzer, who was able to close up, but not enough to jump back into P2. The gap between the two of them now 12 points. We now have John Lauzon only a further point behind, with Jacob Wiley there in P15, continuing to close up to Smith and Statzer gradually, and it's Daniel Sodino P16, who is also in the pursuit for P2 in the Delta Class Championship, ahead of Adrian Fedorowski, 5 points between the two of them, and it's Kirk Lane, Dom Savio and Mark Darnell who complete the top 20. Mark Darnell moving into the top 20 for the first time this season. Then we come on to outside the top 20, P21 through to P30, and we can see James Logston here on 82 points, ahead of Auguste Blondel by 4 points, with Jason Landry at P23, and it's Charlie Perrier and Michael Cochran who complete the run to P25. 2 points behind Cochran is Mark Senegal in P26 down on 40 points, 5 clear of Daniel Smith, who's 2 ahead of Samuel Cram, and then Spencer Cocaine and Joseph Oetz who will complete the top 30. And then the run from P31 to P40, we have Wiley Cox, Tyler Montanez and Sismon Bajuk, followed up by Aaron Hall and John Hinman for P35, and then Alex Kotlowski, Tony Roma, Mark Crawford, Benjamin Harris, and Michael Zepp. And then coming on to our last set of standings here, and we should correct what we said earlier, by the way, in that Mark Crawford was new to the series as of tonight. In fact, he did join us in a much earlier round, so I do apologise there for the slight error. But as we then come on to outside the top 40, P41 there on his debut, picking up 3 points, KT King, a good result for them, albeit with that retirement, cost them perhaps some extra points, but still bringing it on home. And then Ian Maddox, P42, behind KT King based on result countback, with James Vance P43 ahead of Gherkin Demir, and then Ryan Winfeld, John Lynch, Stephen Chalafu and Michael McLeod completing your Drivers' Championship standings. And that's the Drivers' Championship. What about the Teams' Championship? Well, we can see after our 9th round, breakfast for dinner continued to lead the way, albeit the margin has stabilised. It's not increasing, it's staying settled here, and it is a margin currently, if we do the quick mental maths, of what is a grand total of 112 points over Yellow Flag Motorsports. Arguably, breakfast for dinner are in the favourable position, and they do look good to potentially bring this championship home, but we've still got plenty of rounds and plenty of points on the cards, and Yellow Flag Motorsports are not giving in. Households Motorsports, meanwhile, are holding off Beaver Buzz Energy for the time being. Only what is there, 44 points between the two outfits. They're not really in the hunt for the top two right now, but they're definitely trying to battle one another all the way to the finish. With Talk Steer Racing in P5 on 428 points. And outside the top 5, we have QZ Motorsports, Not Last Motorsports, and Back of the Pack Racing completing your team's championship standings. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, those are the standings, and now it is time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show and you want to know more about the Alpha Touring Challenge, the ATC, where it's about getting onto the grid yourself, either in this season or a future season, or just speaking to the drivers and getting to hear a little bit more about what we do behind the scenes, then why not check out our official website, which is the alphatouringchallenge.wordpress.com website. Alternatively, if you want to go to the heart of all the racing action in terms of speaking to the drivers and the organisers, you're welcome to join us on our official Discord, and you can see the invite link available on that screen. But as we now get ready to move on from Interlagos, our next venue for next time, of course, is the Rudskogen Motor Centre Circuit, and what will be our final sprint race round of the season, round number 10 looms, on what will be Monday the 30th of January, but we'll bring you all the racing action as if it were live on Friday the 3rd of February 2023. It's going to be tight, it's going to be technical, overtaking is going to come at a premium, and it's all going to come down to qualifying at the very start and who's able to make those quick and elegant moves in the race to move on up. And with it being 3 sprints on the cards, you can imagine it's going to be fast, it's going to be furious, it's going to be elbows out, and it's going to be the classic touring car racing you crave. Wait for it all next time at Rudskogen Motor Centre. But until then, we have been the Alpha Touring Challenge. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, have a fantastic weekend. But most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, remember to stay on track. Good night.